we wait to find out what the motivation of the attack was, but this at the moment is a knife attack. We see too many knife attacks. Knife crime is something that I've campaigned against and raised in Parliament on a number of occasions. And I think for all of the efforts that the government's making to do things like eliminate zombie knives, over 50% of all knife attacks take place with kitchen knives, and everybody has a drawer full of those at home. So I think there's more that can be done to tackle knife crime and the scourge of knife crime, and the reason why people feel the need to carry a knife and to use a knife. But we need to clamp down on exactly why this is happening and why so many people seem to fall victim to these terrible attacks.
Most definitely. You served previously in the military, Ben, and do you think maybe we need to have a look at the culture of policing in this country and for a more robust approach to public safety?
I think there's certainly conversations to be had, but I was very, very reassured by the response of the officers here. I mean, the first officers on the scene tonight, or last night rather, were not armed officers. They were regular response officers used to dealing with your regular run-of-the-mill incidents on a Saturday night. So I think the bravery of the police in these circumstances cannot be undersold. But I do think robust policing is necessary. But I was very, very reassured by the scale of the response and the severity of the response here. Given that this is Huntingdon, this isn't Manchester or London or Birmingham, there was a phenomenal police response, and that was very, very reassuring.
That's right. The police were very brave, weren't they? Armed cops, of course, putting their life on the line, not for the first time, Ben, and the heroic work of the paramedics as well. The other thing that we're going to need to do when you know the drama of this has passed slightly is just to look at British society and the fact that so many of my viewers and listeners, Ben, don't feel safe when they're in a packed area, when they're in a shopping centre, a football stadium, a pop concert, or on public transport.
I think it's a terrible state of affairs that people don't feel safe going about their normal business. People shouldn't have to worry about their safety when they're doing something as simple as catching a train to London. And the fact that incidents like this keep occurring, I don't think it's necessarily a failure of policing. The police can't be everywhere at all times. This is obviously a train manned by British Transport Police, and we can't have armed officers on every train. But it's a very, very worrying situation that so many people feel unsafe within the country, and a country like this where there's always been traditionally very, very safe, and somewhere that people could happily go about their business without having to fear for their safety. And I think the fact that we are losing that ability to feel safe on your own streets is indeed a massive worry.
There was some concern in the aftermath, Ben, of the Southport triple murder at a Taylor Swift dance class that the public were kept in the dark for too long about the motivation for that particular attack. Do you think it's important that the authorities are as upfront with the public as soon as possible about why this has happened?
I'd absolutely agree with that. I think the fact that I put out a tweet last night when this incident first occurred, just to let people know that I was aware and that I was attempting to find out more information. I got back a slew of comments that were based on speculation and misinformation. So I think it's vital that the news management of the story from a police perspective is to get out in front of it and make sure that we're dealing with facts and make sure that people are aware of the facts. Because I think that will do, irrespective of what the facts might be or how inconvenient or uncomfortable they might be, we need to deal with facts and not speculation. So I would hope that we'll hear more from British Transport Police during their press conference at 10 a.m.
Ben, I'm deeply grateful for your time. I know there are lots of demands on you this morning as you process just what's happened in your constituency. Ben Obasi-Jekti is the Conservative Member of Parliament for Huntingdon, which has been the location of an appalling knife attack on 10 people on a train heading into Huntingdon last night at just before 8 p.m. 2 men are now in custody. Next up, we've got a police statement. I'm not sure if it's a statement or a press conference, but we're going to get more from the police about what may have happened. I understand that it is a press conference. We'll be taking it live, and it will be part of Peter Cardwell's show. Peter's up next. Hello, Peter.
Hi. Really good interview. Very interesting, and lots of information coming out there of Ben Obasi-Jekti. So great to hear from him in the programme this morning. This is obviously a dynamic, moving situation, and we're going to bring you essentially rolling coverage between now and 1 o'clock, and you've been doing that this morning. We're going to continue that now, and obviously we haven't had a news bulletin just in the last few minutes because this is a dynamic situation. We'll take, as you say, the police as soon as we have what they have to say. We'll take that live. We've got reaction on my show from experts, including Peter Blexley. We've got our debate desk panel that'll go through every aspect of this as well. A few other stories around today as well, but this is the dominant one. We'll talk to the chairman of the Conservative Party, Kevin Hollingrake, about this too, and we'll hear what John Healey, the Defence Secretary, has been saying this morning. We'll speak to Chris Phillips, who's the former Detective Chief Inspector at the Met, former head of the National Terrorism Security Office, and we'll talk through every aspect of this because there's so many details that are coming out, both the human story, of course, as you've been covering all morning, but also where did this come from? How did it happen? How can we prevent it? What does this say about our society? Was this a random attack? Was it planned? Is there more to come? Let's hope not. And also, how does the community and indeed the country recover from such a horrible thing?
Yes, and it may not be, Peter, about access to weapons. Clearly, it's not great that you can go on Amazon and buy things which are incredibly hazardous and dangerous, but there is likely a wider societal message behind this, whether it's terror-related or not.
Yes, indeed, and a lot of what the police will be doing. This is still early days, and of course we have experts like Mike Neville here who've been talking us through that. Peter Blexley is coming up in a minute. I mean, there's still, obviously, the first 24 hours, as I'm sure Mike would agree, is the absolutely crucial bit where you get most of the evidence, and that's what the police will be doing at the moment. So we'll get more detail on that. We'll find out what the government is saying about this as well. Obviously, from a lot of politicians, we get, oh, thoughts and prayers, this is all dreadful. And yes, of course it is, and that's fine. But also the question, so many people, there'll be people in touch with me already on Twitter, people texting me saying, you've got to find out how we prevent this kind of thing happening. This can't keep happening. We don't know exactly what the motivations are. We don't know why this happened, but we do know that our country feels like a more dangerous place. We've seen what happened in Manchester. We've seen what happened in Southport. Now we have this with 9 people in critical condition, another one in hospital as well at Addenbrooke's. As Ben Abessi was saying there, obviously that is a very, very good and well-equipped hospital, which is not the nearest hospital, but it's a bigger and better equipped hospital to deal with very serious injuries. So that, I think, speaks to the seriousness of this, the terror that was visited on people simply either going out for an evening, coming home, whatever they were up to.
Most definitely. Mike?
I was going to say, one of the big problems is this. Sentences for knife crime. Only a third of the people caught with a knife go to jail. If you get caught a second time, you've only got 40% chance of going to jail. And we had the ridiculousness of the Sentencing Council telling judges that if you're from an ethnic minority, you should be less likely to go to jail. This is what
have a shorter term.
It's the madness. And a friend has just messaged me who works for the government. The last briefing they had on terrorism was the far right threat of Hell's Angels. It just sums up the problem. So one, there's a lack of will to put criminals in prison, and secondly, there's this belief creating this bogeyman of the far right, which where is this threat? We know what the real threats are.
Really interesting what Mike was saying there, just in regard to that stupid advice that was given by the Sentencing Council, headed by the Lady Chief Justice Baroness Sue Carr. You're absolutely right in what you say. The one thing I would say, and it's not often that I stand up for Labour Cabinet Ministers, Shabana Mahmood, when she was Justice Secretary, stood up to the Sentencing Council and said, look, this is not okay. The ethnic minority aspect of pre-sentencing reports, this shouldn't happen. Your ethnicity should be nothing to do with this. It should simply be, are you a danger? Are you a danger to society? Have you committed a crime? Is there a knife, for example? This is what should happen. And in fairness to Shabana Mahmood, who then was the Justice Secretary, now is the Home Secretary, she has taken a tougher approach on this than many Labour politicians and some Conservatives as well. So I have great hopes that she as Home Secretary, as long as she's not captured by the blob, as long as the Home Office don't say, oh, it's all a bit difficult, well, actually, maybe she can get to the bottom of this.
And Peter, before we wrap things up, the three of us...
I completely disagree with everything Peter's just said then. Completely disagree. I think she had to be dragged kicking and screaming. She wrote one letter. She then didn't know what was going on, despite the fact she had her own people on it. She said she had no power over it. She's the Justice Secretary.
That's factually wrong.
No, I disagree with you.
Well, you can disagree with me all you like. You can disagree with me all you like, Peter. It's factually wrong. She said she would introduce legislation. She spoke to...
Yeah, that was
Baroness
after the
Sue Carr.
fact. After the fact. This is the point, is that when all that incident came up, she was always reacting to it. She wasn't leading on it.
No, she was leading on it.
So I disagree with you.
Well, you can disagree with me, but you're factually wrong.
No, I disagree.
That guidance overall was still drawn up on the watch of the Tories, wasn't it?
But yes,
this has been in the pipeline
it was
for a long
before,
time.
and this is why I'm right and Peter's wrong, because it was Shabana Mahmood who came into government after it was drawn up.
Yeah, but then she could have blocked it out. That's my point. Is that she didn't draft it? Well, she wrote a letter.
Then
claimed that she had no power. But yeah,
this is a pointless argument, but factually I'm right.
Peter, no, I'm sorry, you're wrong.
Peter is always right. How dare
Which one?
We'll agree that more knife crime offenders
We'll
should
agree
go to
that
jail.
Peter is right.
No, let's agree that more knife offenders should go to jail.
Well, definitely. And can I tell you that exchange is what talk is all about? It's a diversity of opinions.
Disagreeable.
And what we have to do is we've got to get to the truth, and of course we'll get closer to that with the press conference from the police, which is coming any second now. Peter Cardwell is up next. Thanks for my team for working so hard this morning. I am covering Friday Morning Glory at 6 a.m. on Friday, so I'll see you then. Thanks for your company. Keep it Peter Cardwell. Bye for now.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Well, thank you so much for your company. A little bit later than usual, this is Peter Cardwell with you here on Talk. We're in a rolling news today because of the press conference we're waiting for on this horrific attack in Huntingdon in Cambridgeshire. My guests are with me, Maxwell Marlowe and Amar Johal are going to go through all this. We'll talk to Peter Bleksley in a second. But firstly, I want to get the government reaction to this dreadful attack. If you're just waking up, if you're just joining us, perhaps you missed the news last night. The train involved was the 6:25 service from Doncaster to London King's Cross. It stopped, an unscheduled stop in Huntingdon in Cambridgeshire. 2 arrests made following this horrific attack. 10 people injured, 9 fighting for their lives, and 2 arrests. We're going to do this story as our dominant story right throughout the programme, right up until 1 o'clock. We'll have reaction from every angle, including yours. I want you to give me a ring on this. I want you to let me know what you think. 0344 499 1000. The Defence Secretary, John Healey, has been speaking to Sky News about this morning. This is what he said.
It's close to home. This was the very service that my wife and I, Jackie, took just a few hours before this attack. It's the service I use every week to get home to Rotherham. So I can't begin to imagine how shocked and frightened those passengers were, and a huge tribute to those passengers and the emergency services for their response, because it could have been so much worse.
A lot of reaction coming into the building. As I say, 0344 499 1000 is the number to do that. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. Send me a voice note on this, less than a minute please, and Tech Up Dave will put it on the air. You can also send me a WhatsApp text message or give me a ring, as I say, on 0344 499 1000. Elisa in Chelmsford says, another dark day in the UK. I'd like to commend the emergency services who so often get so much criticism. It's time for governments to wake up and realise that funding for the police is absolutely crucial for the safety of us all. Theresa May decimated policing numbers. I remember it well. Ever since then, policing has taken a nosedive because there simply aren't enough officers to do the job they need to do. I'd also like to convey my heartfelt prayers for the victims of last night's attack and for all those who have been traumatised by this horrendous experience. Let's hear from Ben Abbas-Jekti, who is the MP for the area. He spoke to Mark Dolan a little bit earlier. There's been lots of media this morning. Let's hear what he has to say.
The train is still in the station, just over to my side. We've also got police still on the scene, much reduced from last night, but we have got forensics still conducting supporting the investigation by examining the train. The train station itself is still shut. There are trains passing through, but they aren't stopping at the station itself. But I actually got here last night around just after 9 o'clock. Which the incident had been dealt with at that point in time. There was a phenomenal police presence here. There must have been 20 to 30 police cars, around 10 ambulances still at that point dealing with casualties, and also four fire engines. But there was a very, very robust police response, and they were able to deal with the situation very, very quickly.
And the latest, is it my understanding correct there, Ben, that the 10 people attacked, 9 of whom are fighting for their lives, are at Addenbrooke's Hospital? Is that the case?
Correct. So Huntingdon Station is actually very near to Hinchinbrook Hospital, but I think due to the nature of the injuries, they have been taken to Addenbrooke's Hospital, which is slightly further away, still in Cambridgeshire, but they've been dealt with there. I've got no further update, unfortunately, on the status of those.
Ben Abbas-Jekti there, the Conservative MP who is in the area. We will take the police press conference as soon as we get it. We will bring that to you live here on Talk whenever that is. But in the meantime, I want to speak to Peter Bleksley, our crime commentator here on Talk. Peter, as you probably know, is a former Metropolitan Police detective. Peter, this is a horrific attack. We've got some of the latest information about the 9 people fighting for their lives after that horrendous attack. 2 suspects arrested. Talk us through what the police will have been doing in the last few hours, because the first 24 hours are always absolutely critical to an investigation.
The very first line that you used to learn when you joined the police back in the day was that the primary objects of an efficient police is the protection of life and property. So in the very first instance, officers will have been engaged in rendering first aid and trying to save the lives of those people so dreadfully injured, along with, of course, the vitally important task of arresting any offenders. Sometimes that's a juggling act. Sometimes the priorities are clear in front of you and you know which way to turn. Sometimes there's split-second decisions that have to be made. Regardless, we know there are 2 people in custody. what will have been absolutely crucial in the very early stages of the inquiry is to check whether they've got everybody who was a part of the attack in custody. So that would have required very swift looking at CCTV on the train, witness accounts and the such like. Thereafter, a lot of the forensic examination of the train, I suspect, will have waited until daybreak this morning. It's so much easier to carry out a full forensic search in daylight than rather in the middle of the night. And of course, ensuring that the people that have been arrested are given their rights under the Police and Criminal Evidence Act. So they will have had to have a sleep period. And then the police, as soon as possible, I'm sure, will be wanting to not only fully investigate their backgrounds, where they're from, who they are, search houses, for example, seize any devices, with a view to trying to establish what their motivation was.
Certainly, and that is so important that we as the public are kept as updated as we can, Peter. How important is the police? This press conference is coming up. We'll bring it to you, of course, here on Talk as soon as it happens. How important is this to keep people updated, and also for the government to make sure that we know, is this being treated as a terrorism offence? How are they attempting to prevent this kind of thing? Should a COBRA be held? All those kind of questions, the government's emergency committee, all those kind of questions are being asked today. And also, do the authorities and do the police have a grip on this sort of thing, whether it's terrorism, whether it's not, however it is being treated? I know counter-terror police are involved. Those questions and the information flow is incredibly important at the moment, isn't it, Peter?
It certainly is, because the government and the police do not want to repeat the mistakes of Southport, for example. They also don't want to repeat the mistakes of a case that was entirely different, but where the narrative was snatched away from the police, and that was the case of the tragic case of the missing woman, Nicola Bulley, where speculation ran rampant on social media, and people turned up at the scene, and there was an absolute car crash in terms of managing the information by the police. So I'm pleased that this press conference is happening fairly promptly today. It's only some 14 hours or so after this awful attack. People do want information, of course they do, but in a situation like this, it is only right that the police speak after all relatives have been informed.
Yes, of course, that is incredibly important, and it would be wrong that the public were told things that relatives are not. Given we know that 9 of the 10 people who are injured are fighting for their lives in the nearby Addenbrooke's hospital, their condition will be something that will be of great interest at this press conference too.
Indeed, and certainly my thoughts, and I would imagine that the prayers of many, were not only with the victims primarily, but with the surgeons, the anaesthetists, the theatre nurses, the auxiliary staff, everybody at that world-renowned hospital who were fighting so hard throughout the night to save lives. And let's hope that they've managed to do that. This is a truly, truly ghastly situation where so many of those people that work in the National Health Service, in the 999 services, it just goes to show what a debt we owe to them, because when matters like this occur, they really step up to the plate and perform like the heroes that they all are.
There are so many people who will see this, will see what happened in Manchester just over a month ago. They will see, they will have echoes of Southport, echoes of other attacks that have happened in the recent past in this country. How safe do you think Britain is at the moment, Peter?
Unfortunately, because I get to meet and speak to people every day on my travels and during the course of my work, when people contact me, they are increasingly saying, we feel unsafe. And that, sadly, is an indictment on the state of Britain. People are feeling unsafe, not only for themselves, but they're also very concerned about the future for their children and their grandchildren. And something really quite drastic needs to be done in this country to stem the increasing tide of crime, to tackle the dreadful knife crime epidemic that we have, and to get a grip essentially, on the open borders policy that we have. This has led to so many wanted criminals, dangerous criminals, and people who go on to rape, murder and commit other crimes coming into this country with barely a check and of course not being stopped.
Peter, stay with me just for a second because I want to play a clip. We're still waiting for this press conference. As I say, here on Talk, we'll bring that to you in full as soon as we have it. Peter Bleksley's still with me, but I just want to play a clip of one of the eyewitnesses to some of the horror that unfolded last night.
They were making their way through the carriage to get away from the incident, from the suspects. They were extremely bloodied. That person ended up, when we pulled in, they were basically on the floor. We couldn't progress further down the train away from the suspect because that person ended up collapsing on the floor. So they were taken into an ambulance pretty much.
Peter, when you hear that eyewitness, when you hear some of the horrific detail that's coming out of last night, what's your reaction?
I'm sure that what we will hear in the coming days, in a very British way, is that we will hear stories of absolute heroism, sacrifice, courage, all in the face of a rampant, dreadful, dreadful attack, and all whilst trapped in a steel tube from which at the time there was simply no escape.
Peter, as always, thank you. That's Peter Bleksley there, our crime commentator, former Metropolitan Police detective. We're still waiting for this press conference. I'll be talking to my guests, Maxwell Marlowe and Amar Johal, in just a second. We'll take a short break now, but as soon as that press conference starts, we'll bring it to you here on Talk. Stay with us on an important day, and we will bring you all the detail we have coming into this building from so many sources right across the morning, right up until 1 o'clock. I want your reaction to 0344 499 1000. Stay tuned for that press conference.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Here with Peter Cardwell on Talk, and we're just awaiting that press conference from Cambridgeshire Police. I imagine there'll be counter-terror police, may well speak in it as well. We'll see who speaks, what they tell us about the horrific attack, the Huntington stabbing, 9 people fighting for their life after that mass stabbing on a train. Terror cops have joined the probe counter-terrorism officers. 2 arrests have been made. My debate desk panel, Maxwell Marlowe, who's a spokesman for the Adam Smith Institute, and Amar Johal, former government lawyer, are with me now. Maxwell, maybe I'll start with you. Just a horrific event, and so many questions.
Absolutely, it's really horrifying. And you know, I'm from Crewe. I get the train quite a lot, and it is just I just can't imagine travelling at such high speeds with these kind of madmen jumping down down the aisles with knives. I think some interesting things out of this, which is that usually about 37% of all knife crime happens in cities, and now it's hit the shires. And I wonder what the reaction will be, at least politically, from this. I think that now the whole country feels unsafe, and that's really concerning. The other thing is John Healey, the Defence Secretary, this morning said that they're thinking of introducing airport-style security to train stations. Now, we already have about 5 million train journeys a day in the UK. What is that going to mean for the rest of us? Why are the British people being punished for the government's own failure on this sort of issue?
And if you have, I mean, I've taken the Eurostar, as maybe you have too, and you do go through airport-style security for that. It takes such a long time. And I mean, if you're going kind of one stop between two rural stations, are they going to have airport-style security? How are they going to staff that? Very interestingly, actually, Chris in Brighton was in touch on text and says the Tories and some of your guests demonised Mick Lynch and the rail unions when they said cutbacks resulting in unmanned railway stations and guardless trains were a risk to public safety. Perhaps they would like to apologise now rather than bleating about public safety after the event. I mean, that is a proposal, of course, to introduce that kind of security. But as you correctly say, we should be allowed to go about our daily business and do something as simple and straightforward as take a train journey without having to go through that kind of security, Maxwell.
Absolutely. I mean, this is what we would have called the new normal. This is not the case ages ago. I mean, we've stopped locking up lunatics. We've stopped removing people from the country who are genuine threats, like this guy, like so many others. And we've just decided to sit back and let the rest of us suffer for this sort of stuff. I think it's outrageous.
As I say, we're waiting for this press conference. It's a bit late. And we will see what they are saying very, very soon. Leslie says, how much longer will we have to put up with this threat? Why should we have to worry when members of our families go out to a shop or a concert, armed police at Christmas markets? The government must act or the country will erupt. We have had enough, says Leslie. Amar, you can understand that sentiment, can't you? But the danger is it has been great to so many people on a number of occasions recently. Manchester, just over a month ago.
Look, I'd start by echoing the tributes that have been made to the police responders and the emergency services, and also sending my thoughts to the victims. It's fairly important not to speculate too much with this sort of thing, but there's a palpable sense of public anger, which is it's certainly not helped by the government's reticence to provide information, and they certainly, when they do provide information, they don't do it consistently. There was new guidance after the Southport riots that it wouldn't prejudice a trial or be contempt of court to release the ethnicity or the nationality of the victim, but since then, with attacks, some of which you've mentioned, the government hasn't done that consistently.
And the police services haven't done that either. And we, as a station, have tried to get bits of information out of people. I wonder at this press conference that's hopefully coming up in the next few minutes, we'll bring it to you live here on Talk. I do wonder whether we'll get ethnicity information to give, not for any reason other than to have a full picture of who the suspects are.
Yes, so I really do hope the police take the opportunity to share, within the constraints that Peter laid out, the maximum amount of information that they can, whilst being sensitive to victims, families, not prejudicing the investigation. But the general calls that we've seen from the Home Secretary and the Prime Minister not to speculate, not to try and find out information, whatever, it's not particularly helpful, I think.
It's not helpful, and it's not realistic either, is it? Because people will speculate, people will, I heard this, or my friend was there, or I saw this information online, or whatever. That's inevitable, isn't it, Maxwell?
It's human nature, and I don't know why the Home Secretary's come out and said, don't think about this, it's okay, it's all in hand. Obviously that's not the case.
Obviously it's not in hand.
Yeah, exactly. And also people are going to be wanting, it's a Sunday, people are going to want to get home or see loved ones, whatever else. Just providing this this vacuum for people to kind of fall into. It just
in fairness to them, they're going to fill that vacuum in a couple of minutes. We're going to get some information from the police.
It's been almost 18 hours. Where what's going on, and I don't think it's helpful at all to public safety. Never mind people's worries and anxieties and concerns about the state of this country.
Yeah, well, we'll get there. We'll get some of that information. Amar, should the government call a Cobra emergency meeting because of this attack? Do you think? Do you think that's likely? Should they do that?
the government always feels like it should be doing something in situations like this, whether it's helpful or not. I don't particularly know. John Healey, I think, said at some point that it's probably an isolated incident. If it is an isolated incident, then beyond the headlines that Keir Starmer would get from calling a Cobra meeting, I'm not sure what the operational point would be. You need to rely on the professionals.
Politicians can also get in the way.
Yes.
You know, sometimes people say, oh, the Prime Minister should have been there on day one. Well, actually, no, I don't want the Prime Minister there on day one. I want the Prime Minister there on day like 3 or 4, because the police need to do what they're doing unhindered by politicians getting in the way. Now, in fairness, Ben Abesajekti seemed to have a lot of information, clearly, I think, on top of his brief there, and actually some of the interviews I've seen with him have actually been very impressed by the information that he has, and clearly not getting in the way, as some politicians sometimes do. Counter-terrorism police have been called in to support the probe, and just some of the detail as well, Maxwell, about frantic passengers hiding in the toilets amid the chaos, the suspect waving a large knife, tasered on the platform.
I think it is a case of it may not be a terror attack, but it has certainly caused terror and fear within not just those passengers. I mean, God help them, really. It's so awful. I couldn't put myself in their position. But, you know, I think for the rest of the country, fundamentally, coming back to my point earlier, 5 million train journeys a day. And, you know, these people could be on any one of those trains. I mean, it's very likely that it's not the case. But if you're sat there, there's usually a lot of antisocial behaviour on trains anyway. I think this ramps things up to a whole other level. I couldn't 2 days ago couldn't imagine this sort of thing happening. Now I kind of can, and that's really worrying.
We've got a message from Mary in County Down who says the ethnicity of the perpetrator or perpetrators is important to know, but also that of the victims. Who was being targeted? While preserving victims' privacy, police must be clear about this. Amar, you're nodding your head.
I'm just nodding my head with the general sentiment, the desire for information, that whoever it was probably just going after who's on the train.
Yes, certainly. Although
which in Cambridgeshire, they're going to be white predominantly.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I mean, obviously they're moving from King's Cross to Doncaster. That's right, of course. So we'll see. Obviously, there could be all sorts of people from all sorts of backgrounds. Thank you to Dale from Staining. He says, thank you for your continuing coverage of the situation. With the train due to be terminating at London King's Cross, my mind leads me to wonder if there's a public intervention prior to arriving at King's Cross. This is genuinely just a feeling I have, and if this is the case, even if it's not the case, the public have been brave, courageous, and the suspects should have the full force of the law thrown at them. Thoughts to those and their families at this time. A message actually from a little bit, this was actually a message to Mark, but I'm just going to read it out, from Leslie. Leslie, I hope you don't mind. Christmas coming soon, and we will be told armed police will patrol Christmas markets. Something is going to erupt if this carries on. Another one to Mark, actually. Carol by Shoreham-on-Sea. What a terrible start to the day. Well said from Peter Barnes and Mike, who were on earlier on. What will it take for those in authority to admit that they have been denying for the past few years that our once beautiful country is being destroyed by their wicked, selfish, duplicitous, anti-British policies? They're putting our lives in danger on a daily basis. Instead of putting the British people first, we should be their top priority. No more lying. We have had enough. Stop this madness, says Carol in Shoreham-on-Sea. And Trevor simply says, a very sad day, Peter, and you're absolutely right. One more from Martin in Bristol. Morning, Peter. Regarding the railway undoubtedly terror attack, I've not heard enough praise for the train driver who had the forethought to take the train through to a train station where police and paramedics could amass and arrest the suspects and injured quickly dealt with. How much worse it would have been if the train had stopped in the middle of nowhere where police couldn't easily get to the carriages. Lives were saved due to his thinking, says Martin in Bristol. We're going to get a lot of this information that's going to come out in the next few days about what is happening, what happened last night, who did what when. And whilst there are at least 2 people who are suspects in this, at least 10 people who were injured in this, 9 said to be fighting for their lives, what we'll hear over the next few days, as we often do, are those who helped, those who thought quickly, those who risked their lives as well, Maxwell.
Totally, and I think that's so important to remember, which is that, you know, I heard stories yesterday about, I saw one tweet saying that a gentleman jumped in front of this guy's girlfriend. He received quite a significant injury to his head for doing so, getting in the way of this knife. These are stories that we need to be talking about, you know, to remind ourselves that actually, you know, we're not helpless. There are things we can do. Speaking more broadly, though, this isn't just the UK, though. Look at Germany, for example. example, the Munich Beer Festival cancelled because of a terror attack, Frankfurt terror attack, I'm sure you remember a few years ago in Nice on Bastille Day, another terror attack. This is a Europe-wide problem, and speaking to my American friends, they're going, what is going on over there? Why aren't you doing what we're doing, sending in the army, removing people who are obvious threats? It just seems like we're completely lily-livered, apart from the British public.
We'll come back to Amar and Maxwell in a minute. We're going to take another break now. As soon as we get that press conference, we will bring it to you here on Talk. Stay with us.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
We're being told the press conference is happening shortly. Let me just read out a couple of messages in the interim. I'm also here with Amar Johal, former government lawyer, and Maxwell Marlowe, spokesman for the Adam Smith Institute. We think we see some officers now, let's get it on the screen, who are coming up to this press conference. Here we go.
Okay. About there? Good. Okay, good morning ladies and gentlemen. My name is Superintendent John Lovelace and I'm here to provide you with an update on the incident at Huntington Station that took place here last night. It's a shocking incident and first and foremost my thoughts are with the family and friends of those who've been affected and those who are injured. At approximately 7:42 p.m. yesterday evening, there were calls to the police service in relation to multiple stabbings which took place on board a train service that departed Doncaster at 6:25 p.m. and was en route to London King's Cross Station. Officers immediately attended Huntington Station alongside paramedics, where armed police officers from Cambridgeshire Police boarded the train and arrested 2 people. Within 8 minutes of the 999 call being made, 2 men were brought into police custody, where they remain this morning. I can tell you that these are the first male, a 32-year-old male, a black British national, and a 35-year-old man, a British national of Caribbean descent. They were both arrested on suspicion of attempted murder. Both were born in the United Kingdom. As stated, they remain this morning in separate police stations for questioning. 10 people were taken to hospital by ambulance, and another person self-presented later that evening. While 9 were initially believed to have life-threatening injuries, following assessment and treatment, 4, thankful to say, have been discharged. However, 2 patients remain in a life-threatening condition. British Transport Police declared a major incident yesterday, and counter-terrorism policing were initially supporting our investigation. However, at this stage, there is nothing to suggest that this is a terrorist incident. This is a British Transport Police investigation, and we continue to work to establish at pace the full circumstances and the motivations that have led to this incident. At this early stage, it would not be appropriate to speculate on the cause of this incident. As you can see, the station this morning remains closed. However, we expect trains to be passing through the station this morning. Passengers will see a high visibility presence of police officers at stations and on trains throughout today, up and down the transport network. Our officers are there to reassure the public and to address any concerns they may have. I'd like to thank the public personally for their patience and their cooperation. Yesterday evening, which has already greatly assisted our investigation through the help the public have tendered, as well as the multi-agency response partners from colleagues in other blue light services. I'd like to extend my thanks to our colleagues within Cambridgeshire Police, the East of England Ambulance Service, Cambridgeshire Fire and Rescue Service, and counter-terrorism policing. And finally, I'd like to appeal for anyone that's watching who has information connected to yesterday's incident, however big or small you feel that may be, that has not yet spoken to police, to make contact. You can do so by texting the British Transport Police on 61016, that's 61016, quoting reference 663 of the 1st of November 2025. Thank you very much. I won't be taking any more questions, but thank you very much.
Did they guess what the police were?
So that is Superintendent John Lovelace of British Transport Police. He said he wasn't taking questions, but he did give us quite a lot of information. The key things are that it is not terror related. They say at the moment there's nothing to suggest that. He's also given us the details of what happened. 2 men. One is a 32-year-old black British national. The other is a 35-year-old British black national of Caribbean descent. They're being held, both of them, in separate police stations on suspicion of attempted murder, both born in the UK. We know as well that those 10 people were brought to hospital, Addenbrooke's Hospital. Very, very good hospital in Cambridgeshire, world renowned actually for a number of things. Another person self-presented later. 4 have been discharged. We imagine certainly another 4 of them are still there, and a further 2 who are still there as well in a life-threatening condition. Clearly it's a major investigation. British Transport Police are involved with it. And also the detail telling us that within 8 minutes of the 999 call, the 2 men were arrested. That is a very, very swift reaction. We got all that information about the 7:42 call, and then by 7:50 the 2 men were in custody. The multiple stabbings that happened on the Doncaster train to King's Cross, and about an hour into just over an hour into that train journey, as it passed Huntingdon, or came up to Huntingdon in Cambridgeshire, we know that that incident was reported and then dealt with. The station's closed still, but we know the trains will be going through it, and he talked about the police presence to reassure people, certainly, right throughout the day in all of this. There was quite a lot of information there. I think there's possibly more information than we were expecting. Amar Johal and Maxwell Marlowe are still with me. I'm going to talk again to Peter Blexley in a second. Amar, your impressions and points that you've picked up from what Superintendent John Lovelace was saying there.
I thought you summarised it very well, Peter. More information than we probably would have expected, but I think it was helpful to try and allay the concerns of the public by getting as much information out there as they could. I mean, just because it doesn't meet the technical definition for terrorism doesn't mean that someone running up and down a train stabbing people isn't attempting to cause terror or in the public perception terrorism. But I can see why they took that line.
Maxwell?
I think this shows that actually when the police are asked to step up, they really do. I mean, that 8 minutes is quite remarkable when you think about it. From a high-speed train to arrest is quite amazing. I'm completely with you on the more information. I think it's really good to see that, you know, the superintendent also said, you know, they've deployed officers on most stations or maybe across the network.
Yeah,
to give
up and down
reassurance.
the train network, he said.
So I think that is really, really excellent. I think it does show the police, you know, we do have our qualms with them, but they do act, you know, when called upon.
Let's speak to Peter Blexley, who was listening to that press conference. Peter, your impressions of it. We've certainly got a lot of information, although I suppose the one thing we don't have is any motivation why these people were targeted. One of our correspondents has got in touch, Mary in County Down, who says the ethnicity of the perpetrators is important to know, who was being targeted and why. She also says we need to remember this happened around 8 o'clock on a Saturday night. Police have been working through the night to try to investigate the background and motive of those involved. Public communication is vital, but so is accurate intelligence and facts. I think we got that in that press statement there from Superintendent John Lovelace. Your impressions, Peter?
Yes, we did. And I understand why there will be so much conversation now. And my social media feed is certainly getting filled with people saying, well, why is this not designated as a terrorist offence? Clearly, it was terrifying.
It terrorised people, yes, certainly.
Yes, clearly terrifying for all those poor souls on the train, those injured, those who witnessed it. A truly awful event. But in order for it to hit the Home Office definition of a terrorist offence, there must be a motivation to spread terror. And that motivation must be driven by a particular ideology. And clearly what the police have discovered in the last 14, 15 hours is that that does not exist. Now, of course, they will still continue to try and establish why the people that committed this attack did it. What prompted them? Was there a spark? Was there an incident? It's clearly a rampage, a subhuman, violent rampage, so alien to every right-minded person in the country who would never dream of committing such carnage. But the details are important. My thoughts are with the police in this regard, and I would ask people just to understand there has to be certain boxes that need to be ticked for it to click, that for it to reach that typical classification of a terrorist offence. Now, I'll go on briefly, if I may.
Take your time, Peter.
Picking up on what I did, excuse me, picking up on what I discussed with you earlier this morning, my very much anecdotal evidence, but it's evidence that I gather every day when people message me, email me, stop me in the street, I meet them at an event, I meet them in a green room, I meet them on public transport. I'm fortunate to have a public profile. People stop me and they talk to me. A concurring theme running through so many of the conversations that I have with people in this country is that they are scared. Scared of becoming victims of crime. And alas, last night, many, many people became victims of a horrendous crime. There really is something that needs to be done in this country to stem the increasing tide of knife violence. There are over 100 offences a day, and they're simply the ones we know about. We do not know the extent to which people are carrying knives, because that is almost impossible to judge. Not everybody that carries a knife, regrettably, gets stopped, gets searched, gets arrested. So the figures that are put out by the Office for National Statistics and the like are only the knife crimes that the establishment knows about. This surely must be a tipping point for the nation when the government, when the police, when education, when every right-minded soul says enough. We have to stop. This has to be stopped. And whilst the causes are multiple as to why people carry knives, whilst many, many academics have dedicated years of their lives to establish the reasons why people carry knives, today, I don't care about that. What I do care about very, very deeply is that too many people are carrying knives. The police now need to shed any cloak of woke, liberal, fluffy, community-related kind of stuff, and they need to get out on the streets in record numbers. They need to mobilise like they did for the riots that followed Southport. In other words, thousands of police officers mobilised and continually kept out there on the streets, in the schools, wheresoever it may be, of Britain, stopping, searching, finding, arresting, and endeavouring to tackle this epidemic which has blighted our nation for far too long. Today, last night, these are tipping points.
Peter, thank you. That's Peter Blexley there, our crime commentator and former Metropolitan Police detective. Amar Johal and Maxwell Marlowe are still with me. Amar, from a legal perspective in regard to knife crime, we've seen that there have been various attempts to get people to hand them in, to crack down. We've heard about zombie knives time and time again from both Conservatives and Labour. Clearly, this is still a very big issue, knife crime and possession of knives in our society.
Yeah, it's a huge issue. Government in recent times has trended towards trying to ban different types of knives. Post Southport, that was even extending to talking about banning kitchen knives. Whereas I would have a lot of sympathy with what Peter is saying, is that we need a robust, zero tolerance, broken windows approach to policing, which would actually go after the perpetrators, not law-abiding people who need knives for their day-to-day business in the kitchen.
What would you say to the suggestion, actually, that there are lots of people who are having restrictions on their liberty, who were taking more precautions, are feeling that, we've heard about women-only train carriages, for example, because of the problems with obviously serious, but nonetheless lower level than people getting stabbed, crimes against women, and certainly issues on trains and antisocial behaviour. I mean, I just wonder when we actually treat the symptoms and the causes of this, rather than simply saying, right, well, the public have to change things. At what point do we then say? I'm thinking as well about the Tel Aviv Maccabees, for example, and Villa Park, saying, well, we can't keep Jewish people safe there, we can't keep people safe on trains, therefore people may have to go through airport-style security or whatever. At what point does the public say, actually, no, hold on, we will live our lives with the highest level of freedom that we can, obviously being sensible to some degree, but also how much of this do you think is the state simply saying, oh, it's all a bit difficult and we just have to give in to the fact that there is a threat, that crime is something that people really worry about, and that there is a terror threat?
I really hope this is a tipping point, but there's been so many of these incidents in recent years where nothing really has substantively changed. The rights of the law-abiding majority are being ignored in favour of the rights of offenders. And I'm a bit like a broken record on this, but a lot of it is ECHR derived. And the fact that the police do need to take into account criminals' rights does stop, in a lot of cases, the police taking really robust action, which they need to.
Maxwell?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I'm sure Kemi Badenoch has referenced similar things previously, but, Emma's completely right? I mean, we're looking to ban or blunted kitchen knives. It's not going to stop this problem. This stuff always comes down to enforcement, and the police and the establishment have completely given up on enforcement in many cases. I think you're right as well, Peter. We need to be dealing with the causes, not just the symptoms of this area. My mind immediately goes to Dunblane and the fact we don't have pistols anymore. If you go back to the Victorian period, I think, to quote Peter Hitchens, our gun laws made Texas look effeminate. And now we've come all this way where, I will only see a handgun if I go to the US, for example. It just doesn't exist. So I think this is a tipping point, but I think the British people are happy for, their liberal sensibilities to be given up with regards to the police, just to get rid of this deadly scourge which is just plaguing our lives.
It's been a very different debate desk this morning, but I want to thank Maxwell Marlowe, spokesman for the Adam Smith Institute, and Amar Johal, the former government lawyer. We'll speak to you again soon. Just to say that Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the Conservatives, has reacted to what is happening. She says there's clearly something going wrong with our society. She told the BBC, I know many people will be asking the same questions that I'm thinking of right now, which is, why is it that despite so much activity, so much done, legislation to ban knives, so much investment in mental health, so much more, we're seeing more and more violence on our streets. How can we protect ourselves? What is causing this? Well, her party colleague Kevin Hollingreg, who is the chairman of the Conservatives, joins us after the news. We'll ask his perspective on all of this. I want your perspective too. We've got lots of opinions coming into the building. Pick up the phone, make the call, let me know your perspective. This breaking news, the fact that we've got more information now from the British Transport Police about a 32-year-old male, a black British national, and a 35-year-old male, a British national of Caribbean descent, who are in police custody on suspicion of these crimes. Of the 9 people thought to have life-threatening injuries, 4 have been discharged, 2 remain in a life-threatening condition. Superintendent Love is saying at this stage there's nothing to suggest this is a terrorist incident. This is a BTP, British Transport Police investigation, and we continue to work to establish the full circumstances and the motivations that have led to this incident. Lots more to come on this between now and 1 o'clock. I want your perspective on it too. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Good morning, this is Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company this Sunday morning. 2 victims still fighting for their lives after the mass train stabbing in Cambridgeshire yesterday. That is our top story indeed, one of our main story today. We may cover other things, we may not. This is a dynamic situation. Things are happening all the time, and we'll bring you the latest here on Talk on my show between now and 1 o'clock. I want your reaction too as well. 0344 499 1000. I can see that the phone's going already. We heard from Superintendent John Lovelace there of the British Transport Police. Within 8 minutes of the 999 call being made, the two men were in custody. They're a 32-year-old man, a black British national, and a 35-year-old man, a British national of Caribbean descent. He adds that both were born in the UK and both were arrested on suspicion of attempted murder. Of the 9 people thought to have life-threatening injuries, 4 have been discharged, 2 remain in a life-threatening condition. We'll go through that. We're hoping to speak to the chairman of the Conservative Party, Kevin Hollingreck. His party leader, Kemi Badenoch, has been speaking this morning. The Prime Minister, of course, has condemned this and says that his thoughts are with everyone concerned. We've got the security expert, Will Geddes, coming up in a second to give us his perspective too. But I want yours as well. What do you think about this? What does this say about our society? Could more have been done to prevent this? I think we can probably say well done to the police for 8 minutes after it was reported that they got this guy, or the 2 suspects, in custody anyway. So well done to them. But nonetheless, are we in danger, I suppose, of treating what happens rather than how we can prevent these things happening? Lots of people getting in touch about that. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. Send me a voice note, less than a minute please. Tech Up Dave will play them out. 0344 499 1000. You can also send me a WhatsApp text message on that number or ring me on that number 0344 499 1000. Loads to discuss between now and 1 o'clock. Stay with Talk. Well, we've heard so much information over the past little while. I just want to bring you some of it again. Maybe you're just waking up, maybe you're just getting a handle on the news. I want to hear from both the Defence Secretary John Healey and the MP for the area. Let's hear from the MP from the area first, Ben Obesi-Jekti. He is a Conservative MP. He's an area. He has been on the scene from last night. He is the MP for the area in Huntingdon, where the train stopped. The train was going between Doncaster and King's Cross. Let's hear from the local MP, Ben Obesi-Jekti.
Train is still in the station, just over to my side. We've also got police still on the scene, much reduced from last night, but we have got forensics still conducting supporting the investigation by examining the train. The train station itself is still shut. There are trains passing through, but they aren't stopping at the station itself. But I actually got here last night around just after 9 o'clock. Which the incident had been dealt with at that point in time. There was a phenomenal police presence here. There must have been 20 to 30 police cars, around 10 ambulances still at that point dealing with casualties, and also four fire engines. But there was a very, very robust police response, and they were able to deal with the situation very, very quickly.
And the latest, is it my understanding correct there, Ben, that the 10 people attacked, 9 of whom are fighting for their lives, are at Addenbrooke's Hospital? Is that the case?
Great. So Huntingdon Station is actually very near to Hinchinbrook Hospital, but I think due to the nature of the injuries, they have been taken to Addenbrooke's Hospital, which is slightly further away, still in Cambridgeshire, but they've been dealt with there. I've got no further update, unfortunately, on the status of those.
That was Ben Obesi-Jekti, who is the local MP. He was speaking to Mark Dolan a little bit earlier on this morning. We've had a police press conference as well. We're going to play all of that statement to you in just a minute or two as well. It was only about 2 minutes or so. That was Superintendent John Lovelace, who gave lots of information about this. The government has been reacting as well. This is what the Defence Secretary John Healey told the BBC a little bit earlier on.
Close to home. This was the very service that my wife and I, Jackie, took just a few hours before this attack. It's the service I use every week to get home to Rotherham. So I can't begin to imagine how shocked and frightened those passengers were, and a huge tribute to those passengers and the emergency services for their response, because it could have been so much worse.
Apologies, that was Sky News that John Healey, the Defence Secretary, was speaking to. Lots of information coming out of this from people who were on the scene at the time, including this eyewitness who spoke to Sky News.
Making their way through the carriage to get away from the incident, from the suspects. They were extremely bloodied. That person ended up, when we pulled in, they were basically on the floor. We couldn't progress further down the train away from the suspect because that person ended up collapsing on the floor. So they were taken into an ambulance pretty much straight away.
Just horrendous detail, and 2 victims still fighting for their lives. Let's speak to Will Geddes now, the security expert who's in the studio. Will, from what the police have said, what are your impressions? They say there is no terrorism link at the moment that they can see. What do you think of that?
I think it's too early to call it, Peter. Personally, when you look at these kinds of attacks and you look at the modus operandi, you have to attribute it to other instances where you've seen similar types of attack take place. Now, until such time as we can establish a clear motivation that detracts or is distant from a terrorist agenda, it doesn't matter what colour your skin is, whether you're of black heritage or whatever. The type of attack that we looked at there was what we would call a marauding terrorist attack.
Yes, a marauding terrorist attack, and this word Plato was used, this code word was used to indicate that this was so incredibly serious. I mean, the emergency services had these men in custody within 8 minutes of the 999 call. That is extraordinary work.
No, that's amazing. You know, the one thing I think we have to take immediately from this situation, Peter, is the police did a phenomenal job, which goes to show they have been preparing for these kinds of events, they've been rehearsing for these kinds of events, and they are getting better and better and better. Obviously, one of the most painful processes for the passengers was the driver pulling into the station before the response services could obviously attend to the situation. The biggest challenge, obviously, for any, whether it be a tube, whether it be an overland train, is you can't just stop in the middle of nowhere, because again, the response could be sort of heeded by that. So you have to pull into the station. So the passengers having to endure that 8 minutes is a challenge. But the police being there and then apprehending the two suspects, excellent work by them.
Tremendous amount of information, actually. The question I have is, why were the people targeted? Was this the people on the train? I mean, was this a random attack? Was this targeted? Were there people of particular ethnicity or background who were targeted? We don't know that information yet, although we do know a decent amount of other information.
Yeah, we know enough, Peter, to be able to draw some very, very clear parallels to terrorism. And one of the things which makes me concerned about this very quick response to not associate it to terrorism is the individuals that they have in custody. They will be looking into their backgrounds. They'll be housing them, where do they reside, who the neighbours are, their digital footprint. And you will not, and I know doing reviews on digital footprints, it's not a quick job. It takes some hours to do this. So
how patient do we need to be, Will? Because of course there are so many people. One of our people who messaged in, actually, Mary in County Down, was saying, look, it's important to keep the public informed, but that information has to be absolutely accurate.
Yes. I mean, if they claw back a little bit later, and again, I would say it would be unlikely, even if it did prove out to be potential terrorism. I mean, we look at Southport as a perfect example of how not to manage the information around the situation. And there is enough that can be revealed without prejudicing any subsequent court trial that may be affected against these individuals. But they have them in custody. And I think you have to put people, advising people on crisis management. The one thing I always say is, put out a holding message. Don't be definitive, because as you rightly say, Peter, if you say the wrong thing or you're too quick to try and maybe sort of curb the speculation that's going on social media, and that is always going to be the risk. And even you guys, you're not going to say a great deal until it's confirmed by the authorities. That speculation, that can blow out of control with people trying to determine exactly what happened. But I would say this has hallmarks of terrorism, regardless of whatever skin colour the perpetrators were or the perpetrator was. And again, we know of one person that was stabbing the passengers on the train. The second individual we don't know a great deal about, or what their involvement was, whether they were doing the same or providing support in some capacity. But at the moment, that the authorities have to be so careful, otherwise they're going to lose credibility. They're going to lose the faith and the trust of the general public, as they did in the wake of the Southport situation.
The King has said, in breaking news, we're just receiving it here, Talk, the King has said he is truly appalled and shocked to hear of the dreadful knife attack on the train near Huntingdon, adding, our deepest sympathy and thoughts are with those affected and their loved ones. That is King Charles III, who has said he's truly appalled and shocked to hear of the dreadful knife attack on the train near Huntingdon. We've also heard from the leader of the Conservative Party, Kemi Badenoch. This is what she is saying this morning.
People will be asking the same questions that I'm thinking of right now, which is why is it that despite so much activity, so much done, legislation to ban knives, so much investment in mental health, so much more, we're seeing more and more violence on our streets? How can we protect ourselves? What is causing this? Lots of people will be speculating. I think we should wait until more facts emerge. But there's clearly something going wrong in our society right now, which I believe all politicians of all parties need to have a conversation about. We saw that attack in West London just last week. We cannot be a country where people are innocently going about their business and facing this level of violent crime.
Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the opposition there, leader of the Conservatives. We're going to hear from her party colleague, Kevin Hollingreich, the chairman of the Conservative Party, will be live in this programme in a few minutes' time. But Will Geddes, the security expert, and I'm delighted, is with me now. She makes some good points, Kemi Badenoch, I think. Why is this happening? Why is there more violence? And especially after all the legislation, after all the investment in mental health, why are these knife attacks still happening? I mean, she has reasonable questions that I think a lot of people, a lot of our viewers and listeners will be asking as well. Will.
Absolutely, no proverbial Sherlock. I mean, in what she's saying, everybody knows that this country is degrading in terms of society. It's degrading in terms of human value and certainly value in human life as well. And I think we have a situation where, unfortunately, it's playing out in the courts. Individuals that have apprehended carrying weapons who ultimately are not being prosecuted as stringently and firmly as they should. And there is this two-tier policing which is playing out, and we're seeing it, Peter. It's not a case of anyone speculating or being particularly sort of politically leaning in terms of their understanding. I think, you know, the general feel, and I get a lot of communications across both my Twitter and my Instagram social accounts from people who are just fed up and they're frightened. I had a couple of people who communicated this morning saying they didn't want to put their child on the train. You look at the railway operators and they have to take some responsibility. You look at the platform of where this attack took place. This is on a train. The only comparable to that, Peter, would be an aeroplane. But you have to go through security before you get on the aeroplane to make sure you haven't got anything dangerous on you.
Will we end up going through airport-style security before we get on a train?
I don't think so. No, I don't think it's possible. There are too many stations.
Too many stops.
But what we have seen is a decrease in train guards that need to be on the train and are moving around, not just checking people's tickets, but guards that are on actual passenger trains. And this was a short train as well, by all accounts, who can actually be there to provide some safety. Terrorism isn't the only risk. There's assault, there's sexual assault, there's rape. There are very many different attacks that take place on something which is a fundamental means for people to be able to move around. You know, it is an arterial support structure to the entire country. And therefore, people need to be able to feel safe when they're on there. And there is economically, you look at the wake of 7/7, Peter. Do you remember with the tubes in London? I was on the tubes pretty much the next day. There was hardly anybody on there because people will be fearful about getting on trains. Of course,
and they will today as well. We will certainly keep you updated on the transport situation as well. We'll do that before the end of the programme. Lots to discuss with Will. We're also going to be speaking to the chairman of the Conservative Party, Kevin Hollingreich. He'll join us after the break. Will's going to stay with us and we'll update you on all the breaking lines around this. Stay with Talk and let me know your thoughts on this too. 0344 499 1000. We will get to calls very, very soon as well. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Kevin Hollingreck is the chairman of the Conservative Party and joins me now. Kevin, thanks for your time this morning. Obviously, there's really only one thing I want to ask you about, and that is your reaction to this horrendous attack in Huntingdon. What are your thoughts this morning?
Well, our thoughts are with the victims, you know, the people who are directly affected by the physical injuries, but also those people who must be traumatised by the whole event. I mean, it was absolutely horrendous. And so the people particularly, it's good to hear that some people have been released or been discharged from hospital, but still 2 people fighting for their lives. So our thoughts are very much with them. And we appreciate everything everybody's done, from the fellow passengers. We hear about incredible acts of bravery, but also the emergency services and indeed the train drivers. So really the picture's still very unclear in terms of why on earth anybody would do this. And we need to know more as soon as possible to prevent speculation. But really, principally, our thoughts are with the people directly affected. And when we know exactly what has happened and why, we need to decide what needs to happen, what needs to change to make sure these kind of incidents don't happen again.
The police are often criticised, sometimes by me, for all sorts of things, for all sorts of reasons, but they did a great job. Within 8 minutes of that call, Kevin, they were on the scene and the 2 suspects were in custody. How do we support them now and make sure that justice is done?
Yes, an incredible job and an incredible level of attendance at that incident. And so the very brave people are our emergency, the people who work in our emergency services, and we should give them our thanks, but also give them more resources wherever they need it. And we've committed to putting 10,000 more police officers on the street. And as well, we should look at ways to try and relieve the burden of the things that keep them off the streets, such as the administration, the paperwork. We want to see those police officers being as visible as possible. So those are the kind of things that I think would help our police force and make it a more rewarding job in the first place. So more resources, more powers, things like stop and search. We've committed to reintroducing things like stop and search, because those are the kind of things that will mean we can find more knives before they're used in these terrible ways.
Kevin, it's interesting as well that so many people are asking questions, not to speculate, not to put things in the public domain that aren't true. That's not what I want to do, but simply asking the questions, including what your party leader is saying, about how safe are we actually if we're going on trains today. Should people feel safe? Should they take precautions? There are so many people who think we want to have as much freedom as we can in our society, but we keep seeing attacks like this, or attacks that are actually treated as terrorism attacks, happening in our society. Just a month ago in Manchester, for example, knives, another big issue, because we heard so much from the Conservatives in government and now from Labour in government saying they want surrender schemes, they want to deal with that issue, but clearly that issue hasn't been dealt with to the extent. I just wonder if we are in danger as a society, and also as sort of the government and political parties, of trying to deal with the symptoms of the problem but not necessarily the causes of the problem. What's your perspective on that, Kevin?
Yeah, I think that's a very important perspective. I mean, our first duty as in government or indeed opposition is to make sure we make sure our citizens feel safe going about their daily business, and these, of course, these kind of incidents make us feel a lot less safe. Now, I'm a big believer in carrying on. We can't let these people win, and I've just put my 18-year-old daughter on a train that's going along that very line where the incident happened yesterday. So we've got to carry on, but equally well, we've got to learn the lessons of these kind of things and make sure we do as much as possible to tackle, as you say, to tackle the symptoms of these things, in things like stop and search, for example, and more police on the streets, but also the cause of them. And there's some things in society that we need to change. We need to make sure that we restore pride in this country and every community feels safe and every community works in a much more harmonious fashion. And there are some of the communities I go to up and down the country, there are some real structural issues in those communities, some cultural issues we need to deal with. That's why I'm very pleased that Kemi Badenoch is leading our party, because she's not afraid to talk about these kind of issues, not afraid to say that all cultures are not equally valid, not afraid to tackle these very sensitive, have these very sensitive conversations, but not ignore some of the realities of what's happening in our communities, in our society.
You talk about your leader. What about the leader of the country, the Prime Minister, and indeed the Home Secretary, Kevin? How can they lead today? Should they call a Cobra Emergency Committee? Is that something that would be helpful, do you think? How can they lead at the moment, whilst, of course, allowing the police and the emergency services to get on with their job?
Well, fundamentally, this country needs a strong leader. I do worry about Keir Starmer having the strength that we need right now, but nevertheless, we will support him in anything he needs to do right now. That's what that would be the right thing to do as the official opposition. I think it's difficult to understand exactly what can be done until we understand more about the motivations behind these individuals. But whatever needs to be done, I'm sure that Kemi Badenoch would lead. Be at the front, lead the charge in terms of making sure we work with the government to put measures in place that would make the changes needed if there are things needed when we understand more what exactly has happened.
Kevin, thank you. That's Kevin Hollingreck MP, the Conservative Party Chairman and Conservative MP for Thirsk and Malton. I mean, I could have asked him about Rachel Reeves and Prince Andrew, but to be brutally honest, those issues I think we've covered in great depth over the last few days, and I just don't think, I think on a day like today, that's the kind of interview I wanted to do. You may disagree, and that's okay. Lots to discuss. We've got Will Geddes in the studio. What did you make of what Kevin Hollingreck said there, particularly in regard to how our political leaders should lead?
Well, yes, I mean, and that's what we should always have, but I mean, our current leadership is about as robust as wet tissue paper. So, you know, we're never going to see any real change. One thing which I think, you know, frustrates me, and I'm sure frustrates most of the general public, is nobody's coming up with any definitive tactical strategy to dealing with this issue. No one's actually making the point of saying, you know what, we're going to address this, we're going to deal with it. And I like the fact that you broached him on the Cobra aspect. Now, whether it be terrorism or not terrorism, a Cobra meeting is justified in this instance to look at what can be done to keep the general public safe. And whether that be PCSOs, which are actually trained and qualified in using tasers.
These are community support officers.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Or
so they're not armed at the moment. They don't have the power of arrest.
No, exactly. They have very little. But there needs to be some sort of protective capability, both on the street, but also potentially on our public transport, so the general public feels safe and they feel secure. Otherwise, it's going to be down to random members of the general public being a hero. And there's already reports coming out on this instance of a man that stepped into the fray, got injured in the process to try and protect other passengers. Is it really down to us, general public, to do it? I think, sadly, it almost seems to be the case.
Well, lots more to discuss on this. I want to read out a few messages because loads of people have been in touch. We'll take some calls after the break, actually. Tracy in Cambridgeshire says, I use this train line regularly, either from Peterborough or Huntingdon to London. I'm shocked to hear what has happened. Trains are overcrowded, less and less train staff, nowhere to hide if attacked. How do we protect ourselves? I feel unsafe. Daryl in Blackburn says, morning Peter, I'm absolutely shocked at this attack last night. It must have been terrifying with nowhere to go for passengers to escape. Today we will find out how cowardly Starmer is. I predict he will ignore the victims, but instead will be filmed thanking emergency services. He won't take questions off anyone and probably find a reason to get out of the country until it dies down, wheeling Lamy and Mahmoud to face up to things. Steve says, it doesn't matter how many police we have, the murderous extremist poison is already coursing through the veins of sections of residents of this country. From now on, every bus or train journey, visit to shopping centres, even the simple act of walking your dog could be your last. Successive governments have failed us, and self-defence may be our only option now. Maybe the US has it correct. If we had the right to bear arms, the train attacker could have been taken out by a British citizen, says Steve. Steve, I don't know about you, I don't want to live in that society where people are carrying around guns and shooting at one another. I don't want it to be like that. I want a peaceful society. I want the British way of life. I don't want to live in that society. But I totally understand where you're coming from. I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you. I just think it's really sad that people, you know, have those opinions because you feel that way, and that's a perfectly valid thing. I'm not criticising you for that, but it is sad to me nonetheless. Joanna in Salisbury says, airport-style security on trains, it's a joke. They can't even get them to pay for tickets. There's always a way for determined, pre-planned killers. Joanna, you're right, actually. I remember being told by a Virgin Atlantic pilot that apparently one of the pilots on one of the 9/11 planes was killed with shoelaces. He was strangled with shoelaces. That was what that Virgin Atlantic pilot told me. And there is, sadly, where there is a will, there is a way with some of these things, isn't it, Will?
Yeah, absolutely. There always is. They will find and they will look for what we call soft targets. And a train is a perfect soft target. It's something which is mobile. It's moving between locations. It's going to hinder, obviously, any response once that attack starts being reported. And thankfully, everybody had phones on them, or most people had phones. And as I speculated earlier today, I believe that it was probably someone from the, excuse me, the general public that actually notified the police, the authorities, and that was obviously then confirmed with the driver. But the driver's going to be focusing on driving the train, not necessarily the safety of the passengers. But there needs to be something in place. The general public, I think, are feeling increasingly vulnerable. And we look at the recent attack in Uxbridge, great case in point. Yeah. And again, the government that we have in place right now have done very little to reassure the general public.
Yeah. Keep your calls and voice notes coming in as well. We need to be careful with what we say on the air. There are suspects in custody, and if you're going to make accusations or say things that we can't legally broadcast, I'm afraid we're not going to do that with some of the voice notes that have come in. But I do want to hear what you have to say, so do send your voice notes in. 0344 499 1000. If they're within the law, we will play them. We are the home of free speech after all, and we will of course take some calls, texts and tweets as well. Lots to discuss between now and 1 o'clock here on Talk. Stay with us.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Thank you to Shell, who's been in touch on WhatsApp messages. It says, Peter, there are more driverless trains in action, no guards. This will happen more in the future. Sean in Gloucester says, yet another tragic attack. How many more will we have to suffer before the powers that be actually do something? I fear a massive backlash from the normal people in this country. Another person says, watch train fares double in price for more security. Sandra says, we're on our way to becoming a third world country unless something is done to stop it. It is terrifying. I no longer feel peace. In my own country, I'm constantly living with stress and fear because we can all see what is coming. Simon in Durham says, as much as the news of the heinous incident yesterday is an absolute tragedy and horror, I think in the main, England and the UK are safe places to live, and we should 100% acknowledge that fact despite terrible news like this. Take where I live in County Durham, it is an incredibly safe place to live, work and bring up children, etc. Thank goodness for this, says Simon in Durham. I just want to bring you back to the facts in all of this, what we know and what we're being told. I want to hear now again from Superintendent John Lovelace. This is what he said earlier on. We're going to play the whole thing. It's only about 3 minutes, but it tells you all the facts the police have put in the public domain. This was given about an hour ago. It just brings you right up to date. Then we'll continue to talk to our security expert, Will Geddes, and hear from you as well. This is Superintendent John Lovelace of the British Transport Police.
At approximately 7:42 p.m. yesterday evening, there were calls to the police service in relation to multiple stabbings which took place on board a train service that departed Doncaster at 6:25 p.m. and was en route to London King's Cross Station. Officers immediately attended Huntington Station alongside paramedics, where armed police officers from Cambridgeshire Police boarded the train and arrested 2 people. Within 8 minutes of the 999 call being made, 2 men were brought into police custody, where they remain this morning. I can tell you that these are the first male, a 32-year-old male, a black British national, and a 35-year-old man, a British national of Caribbean descent. They were both arrested on suspicion of attempted murder. Both were born in the United Kingdom. As stated, they remain this morning in separate police stations for questioning. 10 people were taken to hospital by ambulance, and another person self-presented later that evening. While 9 were initially believed to have life-threatening injuries, following assessment and treatment, 4, thankful to say, have been discharged. However, 2 patients remain in a life-threatening condition. British Transport Police declared a major incident yesterday, and counter-terrorism policing were initially supporting our investigation. However, at this stage, there is nothing to suggest that this is a terrorist incident. This is a British Transport Police investigation, and we continue to work to establish at pace the full circumstances and the motivations that have led to this incident. At this early stage, it would not be appropriate to speculate on the cause of this incident. As you can see, the station this morning remains closed. However, we expect trains to be passing through the station this morning. Passengers will see a high visibility presence of police officers at stations and on trains throughout today, up and down the transport network. Our officers are there to reassure the public and to address any concerns they may have. I'd like to thank the public personally for their patience and their cooperation. Yesterday evening, which has already greatly assisted our investigation through the help the public have tendered, as well as the multi-agency response partners from colleagues in other blue light services. I'd like to extend my thanks to our colleagues within Cambridgeshire Police, the East of England Ambulance Service, Cambridgeshire Fire and Rescue Service, and counter-terrorism policing.
Thank you very much indeed for everyone who has been in touch. Let me just read some of the messages. Will Geddes is here, a security expert. This person says, not terrorism, say that to the people on the train, Peter. Maybe you could explain this to us, Will. What is the difference between something that terrorises people as an attack and a terrorist attack? Because this is not being treated as a terrorist attack, and many people will say, including this person who's messaged in, hold on a second.
Yeah, no, so really what it comes down to, Peter, is the motivation, and that has yet to be established as far as we know, because we haven't been told by Superintendent Lovelace in his particular statement, and let's bear in mind Superintendent Lovelace is given the words to say.
And in fairness to him, he has said there's nothing at the moment to indicate that this is a terrorist attack. So they're not saying definitively this is not a terrorist attack, they're saying at the moment we don't know.
Yeah, they're saying they're not treating it as one, which, again, OK, if you put me under the spotlight, or one of my clients put me under the spotlight and said, OK, well, why wouldn't we consider something as terrorist? I would have to reverse engineer it for them to explain exactly why. And that, unfortunately, puts the police in a very difficult position, because that's what they should be doing for the general public, and deconstructing it and telling them why. Now, the traditional definition of terrorism is about actions or violent actions which are used to create political leverage or to try and sway political position. Now, I think terrorism has changed drastically in its definition, and what we're looking at are individuals that have been radicalised in some shape or form to carry out acts in the name of a particular agenda. Now, that doesn't mean that it's specific to a government or a political party. It could be specific to a religious group. It could be specific to a general civilization and a way of life. So I think the definition of, and I'll probably get shot down for saying this, but my personal feeling is it's the method of attack that is implemented, not necessarily the message that is behind it. And the individual wouldn't necessarily have had direct orders, like we saw with Provisional IRA back in the 70s and 80s, where they were given, these were individuals that were trained, they were deployed, and they were given a very specific point, and there was usually an advance warning notified to the authorities that the attack might be taking place. In these instances, we're seeing more of these individuals that have been radicalised. And again, this is where it goes into this grayer area, Peter, which really troubles me, where things are attributed to mental health. Vast majority of people who are affected by mental health are more passive than they are aggressive. So and let's look at it in its very clearest and pragmatic sense. Anybody who wants to go out and kill someone is obviously not functioning in a normal capacity. Yeah. But to just call it mental health or say it was someone suffering from mental health is not sufficient. And I don't think the general public are buying it. I'm loving the messages coming in, Peter.
Let's go to a few more of them.
I mean, it is the barometer of how everyone's feeling.
Totally. Phyllis says, how is this not a terrorist attack when multiple people were stabbed at random? It wasn't an argument gone wrong, it was a planned attack. Well, we don't know that, Phyllis. We think we do, but we're not entirely sure. Who else randomly carries a knife around, lies again from the police? I don't think, Phyllis, I respectfully disagree with you. I don't think the police are lying to us. They're simply saying at the moment there's nothing to indicate that. But of course, Will has said what he has said as well, which hopefully gives it a little bit more a texture to the argument and the discussion around this. Di says it is now beyond doubt that we need in the UK a leader, a modern-day Winston Churchill, someone not afraid to tell the truth and call a spade a spade. Keir Starmer is the exact polar opposite of that person. As long as this pathetic, incompetent government stay in office, the streets will not become safer. In the police statement, they were quick to state the two black culprits were British-born. Just like to remind people that so was the Southport and murdering scum Axel Radicubana. More to come yet. I have money on it, says Di. Another person says, when we have to put bars on our windows, that means the criminals have won. When we have to put barriers up and cancel public events, the terrorists have won. A sad state for any country and its people to live in constant fear. Also, another person says, one of your guests used Dunblane as a comparison to this knife attack on the train last evening. After Dunblane, thousands of innocent people were punished for the actions of one man. I was being one of them. Should we treat everyone the same as if it were the same? If police say two black people are responsible, then should every black person entering a railway station for train travel be stopped and searched? No, I don't want to live in that society. Absolutely don't want to do that, or to blame people because of their ethnicity, or to blame people because they are part of a certain group. That way, madness lies. Molly says, morning Peter, your guest Will knows so much about security. I respect his knowledge and views, but a train conductor on a train is never going to stop horrendous things like this happening. All he could do is call the police at the next station. He has no protection. We do know that the train driver acted very quickly and very decisively in this, Will.
And they're absolutely right. You know, the person who left that message, a conductor is not going to necessarily put their life at risk and jeopardy for the sake of passengers. But what you have to look at is the capability of response. So whether it be the fabric of the actual train carriage itself or the carriages, that you can isolate a potential threat or a risk, and it can be managed by someone with responsibility, not necessarily just managed by passengers. So again, securing the doors between carriages might be, and creating a safe haven. Again, I'm thinking off the top top of my head right now, Peter. Give me a day or two and I'll come up with some solid ideas, I hope. But I think ultimately we're in a position now where the safety is degrading, whether in actuality or whether in perception. But security and safety is degrading, and I think that's evident by the messages that you're receiving. People are very, very concerned.
Well, here's one that speaks to your point really, really clearly. Kevin Hollingrake, the chairman of the Conservative Party I interviewed about 15 minutes ago, Kevin Hollingrake just said we will learn the lessons. Capital letters. We do not want to learn lessons. We want to catch trains, we want to walk our dogs, we want to go to the bank without fear of being stabbed or killed. That says it all.
Yeah.
That's the message of the morning.
It does. It really is. And why are times changing? And what has contributed to those times changing? And I'm apolitical, Peter, you know that. But I point my finger directly at this current government. They are exasperating this situation. They're inflaming it, they're making it more difficult.
How so?
In terms of obviously not only the control of illegal immigrancy coming into the country and the management of that, but I think also the depreciation of our police. I think also their political influence.
Wouldn't you level that criticism of the last government as well?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, and Theresa May, she was responsible for cutting so many police officers. And when they promise and pledge, we'll put another 10,000 police officers on the ground. Well, yeah, you don't have a grow bag where they're literally just going to pop out fully trained and fully experienced. That's going to take 3, 4, 5 years potentially to get seasoned police officers. But again, it's the political influence on our police. You look at that here in London with Sadiq Khan and the influence on Mark Rowley and the Metropolitan Police. And I know, I've got many, many good friends who are in the police, and they're wringing their hands and they're pulling their hair out at the controls that are being put on them and how they're being directed in how they're enforcing the law.
It's interesting, Simon's been in touch and says, can we ask Mr Starmer how many deaths and murders it will take for something to happen? Another person says, unfortunately, until someone from the Cabinet, their family is directly, negatively impacted by these attacks. That's all they are. They will not come to an end. Ian says, looking forward to Starmer going on about digital IDs all week. It was looking at buying a stab vest yesterday, says Ian. Really, Ian, is that what it's come to? Cliff in Berkshire says, Cliff, I haven't heard from you in a while, great to hear from you. Cliff says, problem is that we are always playing catch up. The plane used for terror, increased security. Using cars for attacks, increased barriers to prevent it. If they introduce airport-style security at railway stations, the attacks will move somewhere else. What do you make of what Cliff said there?
Yeah, Cliff's absolutely right. You know, the criminals...
It's a constant battle, though, isn't it?
Yeah, of course it is. I mean, and that's our job. I mean, those of us who work within this environment, we're always looking at and crystal ball gazing to a certain extent as to where the next threat or where the next attack is going to take place. But the one commonality that prevails throughout the whole thing, Peter, is terrorists, like criminals, will look for the path of least resistance. They're going to look for the easiest possible way to achieve their objective. Then you sprinkle into that equation the publicity that will be drawn from it. So again, looking at locations which are easily identifiable, not only to the domestic people that are going to be impacted, but internationally. So whether it be outside Big Ben or another landmark, for example. So again, it's looking at what we can do to try and make things safe without turning our society into a fortress mentality. And I mean, and yes, I totally get that individual saying that one message from that chap who said, I'm going to get a stab vest, you know, an anti-stab vest. I've had a lot of messages from a lot of guys within my world who are saying, I am now regularly travelling about my business with a med pack on me, with tourniquets and various other sort of emergency medical equipment. And the sad thing about it is I understand why.
Yeah. It's grim, though. It's absolutely grim. And I don't want to scare people, I don't want to alarm people, but this is reality. This is how
it is.
And it's the reality. And it's also how people feel. It's an emotional response. Obviously, when you see those horrific scenes, when we hear the detail of that, you think, hold on a second. You know, loads of people, including Kevin Hollingrake and other different people, getting in touch saying, I use that train line all the time.
Yeah.
You know, I've been on that train. I've gone up to Doncaster, gone up to Cambridge, or Huntingdon, or whatever. And taking a train, the most normal thing in the world on a Saturday evening, coming back from a day out or football or whatever, seeing friends, relatives, or maybe going out, going into London for the evening, something like that, for all sorts of reasons. I mean, this is just the most normal, straightforward activity that turned into a really horrendous scene. And there is just that sense that anything like that could happen at any stage. And I suppose that's always the case anyway, but when these things happen more frequently, the fear goes up. How do we reassure people? Can we reassure people?
I think we can, Peter. I think we have to, the one thing that we have to do, particularly during these emotive times and over the next 24, 48 hours, people are going to be, who have been impacted by this, whether it be about the concern for their own children, their family. I mean, a good mate of mine, his daughter literally got off that same train line a few hours before this incident actually took place. And he called me up and said, Will, you know, I'm feeling concerned about sending her back on that line.
Yeah.
The thing is that if you look at the number of train lines that we've got across this country, it's a considerable amount. The chances of something happening to anybody at this level is minimal, and we have to remember that. And the chances of getting caught up in that is wrong place, wrong time. However, that doesn't diminish from the fact that the general public needs some degree of reassurance that if something like this is to happen, what's going to happen?
Will, thank you. That is Will Geddes, security expert. Really appreciate your contribution to the show today. No better man. Lots to discuss. We'll get to your calls, as I promised, in just a minute here on Talk.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
I'm sorry it's taken us a little while to get to your voice notes and calls. There's just been so much happening this morning, but as always, it's an incredibly important part of our programme to hear from you. Let's hear a voice note from Jenny.
Hi, Peter. It's Jenny. I would say good morning, but it isn't a good morning at all. One thing I think that maybe they should look at is they should stop online sales of knives. Amazon, eBay, places like these, any company that sells knives online should be held accountable, because this is how these people are getting their knives. Most of them don't walk into a shop and buy a knife because there are restrictions. But these online sales, they've got to stop. And these big companies have to be accountable for them. Thank you, honey. Have a good day.
Jenny, you have a good day too, and thank you for those really pertinent points. It's far too easy to buy a knife online. Really appreciate the voice note. Keep them coming in, 0344 499 1000. Nick has been in touch about this too.
Morning, Peter. It's Nick from Loughborough. You can ban all the knives you want. You can ban zombie knives, machetes, kitchen knives. It doesn't really matter, because somebody who's willing to stick a knife into somebody's chest isn't going to take a blind bit of notice what sort of knife they use or where they get it from. Apart from which, one of the murders recently was carried out with a screwdriver, as was the Yorkshire Ripper's tool of preference, screwdrivers and hammers. Where do we go with that? Do we start closing all hardware shops as well? Banning certain implements is not the answer, Peter. Have a good day.
Nick, thank you for your thoughts on that, and I've come back to what a Virgin Atlantic pilot told me a number of years ago, and going back a long time here, told me that one of the 9/11, he had been told anyway that one of the 9/11 pilots had been strangled with shoelaces. So do we ban shoelaces? It is just one of those things that I think it's not so much about banning things necessarily, although Jenny makes a really good point in regard to the ease of buying these big zombie knives and so on online. It's a clear issue. We've covered it on this programme. In fact, we bought a zombie knife online to show how easy it was on one occasion on Talk. I want to talk to Matt in Cheshire now, who's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. I do apologise that at 5 to 12 it's the first caller of the day. But Matt, you'll understand it's a very, very busy morning, and it's always good to talk to you. What is your perspective on all of this?
Hi, good morning, Peter.
Morning.
So I've sort of changed my comments since I found out the identities of these people. My first thought would be, actual Rudy Cabana killed 3 children and had possession of ricin, not terrorists, not a terrorist attack.
Yeah.
Baldo Calacane killed 3 people with a knife, not a terrorist attack. So are black people exempt from being called terrorists?
I'm not sure they are per se, Matt. I don't think it's to do with their race necessarily. And in fairness, what the police said was at the moment they have no indication that this is a terror attack. They're not saying it's definitely not a terror attack. They're saying at the moment they don't know. And they are earlier in their inquiry.
I do want to say on behalf of most of the public that nobody believes the government or the police anymore because of their actions of the last few years.
They've botched things. I mean, you mentioned Southport. They absolutely botched that. No doubt about it in terms of some of the information that came out or didn't come out. And getting that trust back, Matt, as you correctly say, is very difficult, isn't it?
If we look at the sentencing guidelines that were meant to come out earlier this year that got stopped, they were favouring ethnic minorities over white people. So how do we know that even arrests and information given out to the public doesn't save and protect certain ethnic groups from being judged on what they've done?
It's a very good point, and in fairness to Shabana Mahmood, she stopped that. I mean, Peter Barnes and I had a bit of a Barnesy, if you will, earlier on about that, and he said that I was too generous to Shabana Mahmood, but I do think she has some clear ideas about this anyway and how this should be tackled. We've heard from Kemi Badenoch as well this morning. How should it be tackled, Matt? What would your solution be?
One last thing, it would be, if all these people turn out to be white, every one of them, that have been attempted murder on their lives, would it then be a racist attack? And we're giving limited amounts. The gentleman in Liverpool who knocked down a load of people at Liverpool's celebration.
That's it, Matt. I'm just going to stop you there. That's an active case, and we just need to be really careful about that. We just don't want to. We want justice to be done. We don't want to prejudice any. Of course, I know you totally understand that, Matt. But just in the point. And the point you're making in regard to was it racially motivated? Well, the answer is we don't know. And we don't know. And what I wanted to know from the police, and the question I have, and I think maybe you have it too, Matt, is who was targeted? Why were they targeted? Was it all women? Was it all men? Was it people of a certain ethnic or a background? We don't know that yet. And I think we probably should have been told.
Well, Labour are creating the environment for violence and the fear of violence to be imposed on the public, and there's a sense of dread out there, everyone I speak to, that seems to come with this government, it's almost like when this government was elected, we all knew that these things were going to happen. So this happened under Joe Biden as well. Women were being killed, women were being raped and murdered, and suddenly Labour come in and these same things are happening in Britain.
Terror attacks happened under the Conservatives as well, though, didn't they? London Bridge, the Fishmongers Hall. There were lots of different things happened under them as well. Did you feel safer under the Conservatives?
I'm just saying that in the last week, Peter, the last 2 weeks,
yeah, it's a fair point.
An absolute bedlam.
Yeah,
and people don't know what the hell is going on. And
we've got to go to the news, Matt, but I think those points are absolutely valid. We'll get more calls, texts, and tweets after the news. Stay with us here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Thank you so much for your company this afternoon here on Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell, right through until 1 o'clock, and we are, of course, talking about the only story in town today. This is the two victims still fighting for their lives after the mass train stabbing. Police say there is nothing to suggest a terror attack. Certainly there are people questioning that, and certainly the people on that train were terrorised. There are, we know from British Transport Police, a number of them still in hospital with serious injuries. We will talk about all of that right through until 1 o'clock, and when you tell us your thoughts as well on all of that, you can pick up the phone, you can let me know. 0344 499 1000. We're going to talk to a counter-terror expert in a second. We're going to talk to a reporter on the scene. We're also going to talk to a travel expert, Simon Calder. Loads of people on a Sunday go somewhere, see a relative, go and see friends, go out to a football match, whatever it is. on the trains, what is happening on the trains today. News you can use coming up between now and 1 o'clock, and do give us your thoughts. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a voice note, less than a minute please, and you can also send me a WhatsApp text message and give me a ring, all on the main number 0344 499 1000. Lots to discuss between now and 1 o'clock about this attack on the train in Huntingdon. Stay with us here on Talk. Well, Superintendent John Lovelace of British Transport Police gave an update just about an hour and a half ago. These are the key things about what he said. Let's play this.
At approximately 7:42 p.m. yesterday evening, there were calls to the police service in relation to multiple stabbings which took place on board a train service that departed Doncaster at 6:25 p.m. and was en route to London King's Cross Station. Within 8 minutes of the 999 call being made, 2 men were brought into police custody, where they remain this morning. The first male, a 32-year-old male, a black British national, and a 35-year-old man, a British national of Caribbean descent. They were both arrested on suspicion of attempted murder. 10 people were taken to hospital by ambulance, and another person self-presented later that evening. While 9 were initially believed to have life-threatening injuries, following assessment and treatment, 4, thankful to say, have been discharged. However, 2 patients remain in a life-threatening condition.
That is Superintendent John Lovelace of the British Transport Police. You've been reacting to what he has been saying and what we have been broadcasting all morning here on Talk, and will continue to do so right through until 1 o'clock. One person says, if it's not terror related, why did they do it? Well, just to clarify, the police said there's nothing to suggest at the moment that it's terror related. They may of course change their mind later on. They're talking to the 2 suspects at the moment. They're being interviewed, that 32-year-old black British man and the 35-year-old black British Caribbean man. They're talking to them, they're interviewing them on suspicion of attempted murder. Sean says, if I had to go on a train tomorrow, I'd be terrified. That's Sean in Bridlington. Shane says, laws restricting self-defence need to be reviewed with the purpose of allowing the public to defend themselves in some way. The police will almost never be present in time to prevent an attack, and thus cannot be relied upon to protect the public during an attack, says Shane. Shane, I think you're right. Also, we know that it was 8 minutes between the 999 call and the police getting the suspects in custody. So I think we can say on this occasion the police did their job, they did what they should have done, and they did it well. Where is Starmer? It's like a new version of Where's Wally? Well, he has certainly put out a statement condemning this and saying that his thoughts are with the victims. I'll see actually if we can get that statement. Jodie, the producer today, perhaps we can get the statement from Starmer and put it on the screen, and I will read that out. We've had statements from various people, including Kemi Badenoch. Let me play that now, actually. Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the Conservative Party, asking quite a number of questions about why this happened and what we do now. The leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch.
Many people will be asking the same questions that I'm thinking of right now, which is why is it that despite so much activity, so much done, legislation to ban knives, so much investment in mental health, so much more, we're seeing more and more violence on our streets? How can we protect ourselves? What is causing this? Lots of people will be speculating. I think we should wait until more facts emerge. But there's clearly something going wrong in our society right now, which I believe all politicians of all parties need to have a conversation about. We saw that attack in West London just last week. We cannot be a country where people are innocently going about their business and facing this level of violent crime.
Well, Keir Starmer, I've got the tweet here, says, the appalling incident on a train near Huntingdon is deeply concerning. My thoughts are with all those affected. My thanks go to the emergency services for their response. Anyone in the area should follow the advice of the police. The Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, says, after last night's horrific attack, my thoughts today are with the victims, their friends and family. My deepest thanks go to British Transport Police, Cambridgeshire Fire and Rescue Service and the East of England Ambulance Service. They responded rapidly with the utmost professionalism and saved lives. I would also like to pay tribute to the exceptional bravery of staff and passengers on the train. We now know this attack is not being treated as terrorism, and the 2 British-born British nationals have been arrested. The investigation is ongoing. I'm receiving regular updates from the police. Well, our party colleague John Healey, the Defence Secretary, was on Sky News this morning. This is what he said.
This is close to home. This was the very service that my wife and I, Jackie, took just a few hours before this attack. It's the service I use every week to get home to Rotherham. So I can't begin to imagine how shocked and frightened those passengers were, and a huge tribute to those passengers and the emergency services for their response, because it could have been so much worse.
John Healey, the Defence Secretary, speaking to Sky News this morning. Also, we know that Nigel Farage has responded to this, the leader of Reform UK. He has said on Twitter, the attack last night in Huntingdon was horrific. My thoughts are with all the victims and their families. We need to know who committed these awful attacks as soon as possible. That is what the police are trying to establish now. They do have 2 suspects in custody. I want to talk to Chris Phillips, a former Detective Chief Inspector at the Metropolitan Police and the former head of the National Counter-Terrorism Security Office. Chris, thank you for joining me this afternoon. What do you make of this? What will the police be doing now? Just talk us through the steps that they will be going through. And also, we're told that there isn't information right now that this is terror related. That could change later, couldn't it?
Yes, it could. And the investigation will be focusing on some kind of a motive, Peter. And we don't know exactly what kicked off this incident, whether it was robbery related, whether it was a dispute. We don't know that yet, and that's what the police are looking into. And of course, for it to be a terrorist attack, there has to be a motive, which is to frighten the public, to change the ideology of the country or the way politics work. So we don't know, and clearly the police don't know that for certain yet, but they'll be doing that work, and that's where the background goes. What I would say is the fantastic response of policing and also actually the incredible work by the driver to make sure that the operation that they're trained to do actually took place. And 8 minutes is quite incredible from a 999 call to getting firearms officers there and to deal with suspects is quite incredible. And yes, we've got 8 people injured, 10 people injured, but it could have been so much worse.
Yes, we know, of course, that there are 2 people in a serious condition. There are others still in hospital. 4 have been discharged. 10 people brought to hospital in the first place. Another self-presented later on for discharge. 2 are in a life-threatening condition. So we will certainly keep you updated on all of that right through to 1 o'clock and indeed all of tomorrow. No doubt this will be a huge story on Talk tomorrow and indeed through the week. Chris, how long can they keep the suspects? What will they be trying to establish? Just talk me through the likely steps in that investigation.
Well, there's an initial timing of 24 hours. They will almost certainly need more than that to look into what these people have been doing. Clearly, interviews start taking place quite quickly because they want to find out what kicked this off, what the motive is, if they can get some early clues. But then, of course, they'll want to go back and interview them again when they've got all the evidence from their phones, from their backgrounds, from their life, so that they can really decide what's kicked this off.
Yeah, and that is a long process, isn't it? It's a process that can take a while, particularly in terms of getting that digital footprint and getting into those phones. You're right, though, just in regard to this incident and the fact that the police got there so quickly. We are also hearing incredible stories about the bravery of the public. One man in particular who apparently put himself in harm's way and sustained an injury to protect others. Chris, are you there? Oh, I think Chris is perhaps frozen there. We'll see if we can get him back on the line. In the meantime, let me thank Bob in Cheltenham, who's got in touch just about what Matt in Cheshire was saying just before the news there. Bob says, regarding Matt's comments, black people are actually more likely to be charged with criminal offences than white people. Crown prosecution research shows that that is true. And this is the published research by the Crown Prosecution Service showing that ethnic minority defendants are more likely to be charged for a comparable offence than white British defendants. And Bob in Cheltenham has sent that to me, a 2023 study finding the charge rate of 69.9% for white British suspects versus 77.3% to 81.3% for those of mixed heritage. So thank you for that additional information. I love how so many of our viewers and listeners have expertise in all sorts of different things and personal experience and good opinions as well, just strong opinions, things that have really got through to them about this horrendous attack today. We'll go back to Chris Phillips in just a second, but I just want to read two comments before I do. One is from Mark in Derby, who says, introduce the death penalty for acts of terrorism resulting in death or multiple deaths of victims as if an act of treason against the state. If they act like animals, they should be put down like animals. Mark, I disagree with you, but thank you for your comment. Chris in Devon says, regarding the stabbing on the train, the perpetrators of the stabbings should have been executed by the police at the scene. That's what would happen in America. Why should the taxpayer have to pay the bill to house these monsters in prison, given food, heating and pool table use to entertain them, says Chris in Devon. Well, we know 2 suspects are in custody at the moment. Nobody's been charged yet, and we'll find out what the police do. Back to Chris Phillips, the former Detective Chief Inspector at the Metropolitan Police and former head of the National Counter-Terrorism Security Office. Chris, I was just asking you about the incredible bravery of the one person we're hearing about, one man on the train who put himself in harm's way, sustained an injury apparently, trying to stop this happening. And of course the police did turn up. They turned up very, very quickly, within 8 minutes. And it's a huge operation. How much preparation, how much training will they have been through for that? And I mean, it was interesting speaking to Will Geddes, the security expert, a little bit earlier, saying they're so well trained because they know this kind of thing is happening more and more.
Yeah, and we've been expecting this for some time, to be honest, and this type of, I mean, this isn't a terrorist attack at the moment, but we're expecting these multiple coordinated attacks. So yes, the police are used to practicing and training for them. The response was brilliant. But we do live in a society now where, you know, we've never had a society, Peter, that hasn't had crime. Don't get me wrong. You know, I was dealing with crime 30 years ago and some horrible people. But we now seem to have a brazen type of crime that we didn't have in the past. And that's what the police have to prepare for, with less resources than ever. So it's a difficult call for them. We don't have enough police officers in the country, and we need to fund them if we want to be protected.
Are we dealing just with the results of people having knives, of people carrying out, whether they're designated as terror attacks, whether they are attacks that simply are terrorising 2 people? Are we simply dealing with the ends of that? Surely we should be looking at the causes of that in a greater depth and in a more pragmatic way. How do we do that, Chris?
Well, you know, the strange thing is, people like me were saying years ago, and I've been saying for many years, that, you know, while stop and search is something that, you know, can annoy people. If you're an innocent person, you get stopped and searched. That is an annoyance. But you do have to have the ability to take these things off their hands and dissuade people from carrying weapons before they actually get used. And stop and search is one of the only things that you can do to make that happen, because you can't stop people getting hold of a knife, you can't stop people getting hold of a baton or whatever. So you have to have the ability to work these people out and identify them. And you're going to make mistakes. Policing is never going to be 100%, but you are going to make mistakes. But you do then make the chances of getting caught much greater.
Are we in danger of pussyfooting around this issue? Has that happened for too long?
Oh, Peter, we've been pussyfooting around it for years. You know, the policing, the whole criminal justice system is underfunded. We haven't got enough prison cells. You know, policing used to be about preventative policing, community policing. It's now about response policing. That's not actually the fault of police officers. Mm-hmm. That's the fault of a lack of resources. And we have a society that you know, and if a police officer takes any kind of robust action, it's all over the magazines and papers and news, and that police officer then gets badgered for it. We have to accept that policing is a difficult thing to do. They will make mistakes, but if we want a society that's safe, then you have to give the powers to the police and get rid of all these stupid laws, you know, about the online stuff that the police have had to deal with because the government have passed laws on it, and let them get back to proper policing, keeping our streets as safe as possible.
Chris, thank you. That's Chris Phillips there, former Detective Chief Inspector at the Metropolitan Police, former head of the National Counter-Terrorism Security Office. I really appreciate your time today. Thank you for that. The King has said he is truly appalled and shocked to hear of the dreadful knife attack on the train near Huntington, adding, our deepest sympathy and thoughts are with all of those affected and their loved ones. I just want to bring you right back to this attack. I want you to hear from an eyewitness, a man called Gavin, who spoke to Sky News. We're hearing about this, we're talking about this, what are the causes, how do we deal with this? I just want to remind you what happened, what those people went through, and Barry's made a really good point when he texts in to say 8 minutes is a heck of a long time if you're in a situation where someone is trying to murder you. You're absolutely right. The police did act quickly though, and I do think we should give them praise for that. Let's hear what Gavin, the eyewitness, told Sky News.
They were making their way through the carriage to get away from the incident, from the suspects. They were extremely bloodied. That person ended up, when we pulled in, they were basically on the floor. We couldn't progress further down the train away from the suspect because that person ended up collapsing on the floor. So they were taken into an ambulance pretty much straight away.
That's an eyewitness who just gave his name as Gavin to Sky News, and we will go live to the scene in Huntingdon. Our reporter is there, Ollie Cole. We'll speak to him in just a minute and get the absolute latest here on Talk. Stay with us.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Well, let's remind ourselves what Superintendent John Lovelace said of the British Transport Police, the detail he gave at a press conference about an hour and a half ago.
At approximately 7:42 p.m. yesterday evening, There were calls to the police service in relation to multiple stabbings which took place on board a train service that departed Doncaster at 6:25 p.m. and was en route to London King's Cross Station. Within 8 minutes of the 999 call being made, 2 men were brought into police custody, where they remain this morning. The first male, a 32-year-old male, a black British national, and a 35-year-old man, a British national of Caribbean descent. They were both arrested on suspicion of attempted murder. 10 people were taken to hospital by ambulance, and another person self-presented later that evening. While 9 were initially believed to have life-threatening injuries, following assessment and treatment, 4, thankful to say, have been discharged. However, 2 patients remain in a life-threatening condition.
Let's go live to the scene now. Our sister station Times Radio's reporter Ollie Cole is there, and Ollie has generously consented to talk to us. Ollie, what is the latest you can bring us from the scene in Huntingdon?
Well, behind me, the station here at Huntingdon remains closed. It will remain closed for the rest of the day. That's just come in from the Transport Secretary, Heidi Alexander, in the last few minutes. However, trains are running through here. And behind me on the platform is the LNER train, which is still under investigation, still being looked at by officers here. They'll be trawling through as much evidence as they can, from DNA through to the camera footage on board the train, the CCTV. Here, just hours ago, last night, 20 to 8 p.m, loads of passengers were taken off of this train behind me and brought to safety. Also, what happened was 2 men were arrested, as we heard there from the police. They were brought immediately into custody. They're currently in 2 different police stations. One of them, a 32-year-old black British male, and a 35-year-old British male of Caribbean descent. Both were born here in the UK. Now, down the road at the hospital, 11 people were at hospital last night being treated for injuries sustained on the LNER service behind me. 9 of those did have life-threatening conditions at the time when they were brought in. 4 have now been discharged, which is, of course, positive news. 2, however, remain in that life-threatening condition, and we'll wait for further updates throughout the day. Meanwhile, here it's unbelievably quiet as people just sort of mill around and try and come to terms with what happened on a Saturday evening in an otherwise pretty sleepy area of Cambridgeshire.
A tremendously shocking event to so many people. As you say, it is a sleepy area. The railway station remaining closed there. What do you expect to happen in the rest of the day? Is there still a heavy police presence there? What have you heard about when this station may reopen, for example?
Well, look, we know that it's going to take some time to go through that train behind me, carriage by carriage, taking away the footage of the CCTV throughout the whole journey that it took from Doncaster to Huntingdon here, where it wasn't even supposed to stop, by the way. It was an emergency stop here at Huntingdon. So they'll be trawling through that footage. They'll also be looking for any DNA evidence, any evidence that they can gather from that train. And it seems that for now, that train is not going anywhere from the station behind me. The police presence remains pretty high. They are, comforting people who have turned up here to wonder what has gone on Saturday night into Sunday morning. Most people, of course, were sort of out for fireworks or celebrating in some way this weekend, so just coming to terms with the news this morning. So that will remain closed for the rest of the day. Meanwhile, the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, is being kept up to date by the British Transport Police and policing authorities looking at this case throughout the day, so we'll hear more about that. What we do know is, despite counter-terror police being involved, particularly at the initial stages of this investigation, it's not currently being treated as a terror incident. Of course, we do have quite often counter-terror police brought into investigations such as this, which is large-scale attacks, large amounts of casualties, because they are the experts at dealing with incidents of this nature. But at the moment, we don't believe that this investigation is going down the path of looking into a terror attack.
Obviously, it's important at this moment, Ollie, that politicians keep out of the way, allow the police and the emergency services to do their job. I wonder, on a governmental level, what you expect to happen. We've had statements, of course, by Keir Starmer, by the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood, from Kemi Badenoch as well, Nigel Farage and so on. Presumably some of them will want to visit the scene and talk to the victims as well when the time is right. I just wonder whether you expect a COBRA meeting, for example, an emergency committee of the government, to happen later today, or whether, because we think anyway at this stage that this is an isolated incident, that they'll just let the police and emergency services get on with it.
Yeah, so there's not necessarily an ongoing threat, so it doesn't need sort of an absolute urgent response from the government, but we have seen statements coming out from the Home Secretary and from the Prime Minister and across the political spectrum over the last sort of 12 hours. The Home Secretary is being kept up to date by police officials here and by the British Transport Police more generally as to what's going on. They're also in touch with the Department for Transport, where Heidi Alexander is obviously monitoring the rail services quite closely. I would imagine we'll see some political movement earlier into this week. They'll almost certainly allow the investigators to get on with their job while it's still pretty fresh here in Huntingdon. But we know that the issue of crime on British streets and the issue of knife crime in particular is one that has not been far from the headlines in recent weeks, and we can expect almost certainly as we go through the days now into this week and we get further updates on the conditions of those people hopefully leaving hospital in an okay state, that the pressure, the political pressure on the Home Secretary and on the government to do more to tackle violent crime and particularly knife crime across the country will ramp up.
Ollie, thank you. That's Ollie Cole there. He's a reporter for Times Radio, our sister station, joining us live from the scene there in Huntingdon. We'll continue to bring you the latest right through until 1 o'clock. I'm sure tomorrow morning Jeremy Kyle is on Morning Glory. He's going to be talking about this. I'm on Drive tomorrow and indeed all week. This is going to be a dominant story this week. We'll bring you the latest here on Talk. And indeed, we will talk, Ollie mentioned there, about the stations being closed, about the transport difficulties. We'll talk to Simon Calder, the travel expert, very soon about the impact of this attack and other travel news. Just if you're heading out maybe after lunch and thinking, you know, can I go on the trains today? What's happening? Are they running the way they should be or the way they usually are? We'll talk to Simon Calder in just a second. We'll take more of your calls, texts, tweets and voice notes as well between now and 1 o'clock. The main number, of course, 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Thank you to everyone who has been in touch. Jane says, has anyone mentioned the train driver? What must his thoughts be? He must have been terrified too. He had a train full of passengers and got the train to a destination where police could carry out what is needed. Jane, do you know what? You're right, actually. And we've been harsh at various times on train drivers, especially the ASLEF ones, who got huge increases in their pay. Being a train driver is a really, really responsible job. You might have the lives of 800 people, depending on the size of your train, in your hands. You're the person who's driving the train. It's a very, very responsible job. It's a debate about how much to get paid, certainly, but it's not just pressing a button. It's actually a huge level of responsibility. You've got all sorts of checks to carry out, and let's just think and remember the train driver just at this exact moment. Maggie says, I'm highly impressed with the information offered by British Transport Police this morning. The response was incredible yesterday. Cliff in Berkshire says, knives don't hurt or kill people. People do. Growing up in the 1950s and 60s, we always carried knives in our pockets. The only difference then was we would never think about sticking it into another person. Life has become so cheap these days. Final one from Nicola in Norfolk before we get the travel update from Simon Calder. Nicola says, regarding the train stabbings, there needs to be an immediate increase in stop and search and far more stringent penalties for knife-related crime. Enough is enough. The government needs to stop the meaningless words gaslighting the public and actually start doing something to protect the public. Nicola, thank you. We're going to get lots more reaction from you. Calls, texts, tweets, voice notes between now and 1 o'clock. But I just want to speak to Simon Calder, travel correspondent of The Independent. He's in Waterloo Station in London. Simon, what is the picture on the trains today? Maybe if people are thinking they're going somewhere later today, they're heading out maybe now or in the next few minutes and looking at the trains, what advice would you give them? What's the picture?
Yes, Peter, I've just come out of Waterloo Station. I've also been at London King's Cross, which of course was the destination of the 6:25 from Doncaster last night, and the tragic events that followed we know too well. And yeah, I'm really impressed with, first of all, how the public is reacting. I've been at King's Cross for several hours this morning, and while I talked to a few passengers who felt some apprehension about travelling, most of them thought, well, we'll just get on with it. Lots and lots of very visible station response officers there. Very good information provision. And LNER, the train company involved in this, initially had said do not travel on Sunday. Now they're saying you can travel, trains are running, but please check before travel. And that's particularly relevant because the trains are having to slow down to go through Huntingdon. Bear in mind this was a four-track stretch of the route, and they're now restricted because the train is still there as a live crime scene. But trains leaving and departing, and just as well because, of course, end of half-term, many people wanting to travel. Here at Waterloo, really a lot of very visible British Transport Police. We've heard both from the Transport Secretary Heidi Alexander and from British Transport Police themselves that they are going to be stepping up patrols, and clearly that's going to make people hopefully feel a little bit more comfortable about travelling. But ultimately, the only pre-boarding security for any train anywhere in the UK, as you know, is London St Pancras International, and that's for the Eurostar trains because of perception that there is a particularly high risk of terrorist activity in the Channel Tunnel. So if you're going to London, Paris, Brussels, you'll be searched, but London to Edinburgh, Cardiff, Manchester, you will not.
So your advice to people, check before you travel, but in general things seem to be running roughly as they should be, Simon?
Yeah, I mean, it was always going to be a difficult weekend anyway, because the London, the East Coast Main Line, which normally runs from London to Yorkshire, North East England and Scotland, has got massive engineering works actually from Doncaster to Darlington. So actually there were probably slightly fewer people on the train last night than there would have been, because lots of people have found a different route or simply not travelled. Can I go back to a comment you just read out from Jane about the driver?
Of course.
And I would just like to emphasise how extraordinary the performance was of the driver, him or her, and the crew on the train, who must have been absolutely terrified of what was going on, along with the passengers. Dreadful experience. But in the 14 minutes from leaving Peterborough, from this appalling attack beginning, the train driver had obviously picked up from the communication cord being pulled, from the fact that there were 999 calls, managed to negotiate with control room, with the signallers, to get diverted. The normal thing is that train would have gone through Huntingdon at 125 miles an hour. They got it diverted. That meant that they could get to somewhere where the police could step in 14 minutes. It was a remarkable performance. You and I, and of course elsewhere on Talk, there's been lots of discussions about emergencies where the services haven't perhaps performed as well as one would hope. On this occasion, they did everything right. They stayed cool, and that drastically reduced the amount of harm done. Having said that, of course, our thoughts are with the victims of this terrible attack and their loved ones, and anybody who was on the train, passengers or crew, and went through this terrible ordeal.
You certainly need a very cool head to be a train driver, don't you? Because you're right, we've debated this, we've debated their salaries, strike action and various things. The two of us have talked about it on air before, Simon, but actually when you're a train driver, you're responsible for the safety of the train, you're responsible for the safety of the passengers, hundreds of people on many occasions as well. We perhaps should just think about them and the difficult job they do a little bit today.
Yes, I mean, they are taught to deal with all manner of circumstances. Something like this, I imagine, because I've never reported on so awful an incident, is I wouldn't imagine in the kind of in the curriculum. But they do, the actual business of starting and stopping the train and opening the doors and so on is only a tiny part of the training. It's all about safety, and this reinforced the notion that the aim of any train driver, anybody on the railway, is to keep passengers safe, and they did respond extremely well. And anybody who is feeling understandably concerned about travelling by rail and thinking, well, maybe I'll drive instead, please bear in mind that the railways are generally astonishingly safe. The roads, very sadly, not so safe. So I would urge people not to be deterred from travelling by rail. There are an awful lot of people watching out for you, and just so awful that something like this could happen.
Simon, thank you. That's Simon Calder, the travel correspondent at The Independent, speaking to us there from Waterloo in London. Jason's been in touch and says, my brother trained to be a train driver. He was shocked to learn that there are 3 suicides a day on the train lines, and it's the train drivers who are the first to see them, many just walking straight in front of the train. The number of drivers who have PTSD due to witness a suicide is staggering. It's something that isn't talked about anywhere nearly enough. Well, Jason, thank you for that, and yes, we will certainly consider that, and it's a really, really good point worth making. Another person says, this is honestly way beyond Cobra meetings now. To be honest, we have a serious national issue where we have terrorist attacks and killing. This one, of course, not being treated as a terrorist attack just at the moment. Dean has been in touch from London and says it's quite obvious for decades that Parliament and the establishment have nothing but contempt for the British people and the country in general. It's as if our lives don't matter. Thoughts and prayers with all those affected. Mark says we can't stop people who don't pay for a ticket, let alone search people for knives. The is it terrorism or is it not terrorism game? Well, the poor people on that train don't care what it's called, and neither really does the general public. James says, morning guys, with these kind of attacks becoming commonplace, when are we going to have the discussion about self-defence laws and being able to carry something like pepper spray so we can do what the authorities can't do, and that's defend ourselves? Heather says the driver played a big part in stopping the train where help was available. I wonder what would have happened if the train had been driverless. Steve says, I don't believe the police statement is 100% open and genuine, and the superintendent has obviously been given his government-approved script. The government shouldn't anyway be in any way involved in operational matters of the police. And listen, I think we got quite a lot of information through that. There are things he obviously can't tell us at the moment, but I think we actually got more information than I was expecting, and my guests who were on earlier at about 10:30 a couple of hours ago when that was made. Bill in Northumberland says the solution is to have deterrence. Nobody seems to respect the law anymore. When was the last time you saw a bobby on the beat? Great debate, says Bill in Northumberland. More on this right up to 1 o'clock. If you want to get your call in, you want to get your voice on the air, 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
Big news coming this December. Our Talk TV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the Talk TV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Anne is in Sussex and has given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Anne, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say today?
Oh, thank you, Peter. Well, I think like everyone, I'm shocked that this has happened at all. As if we haven't had enough going on in the past. And first, I think with everyone who's listening, applaud the work of the security forces, those who are working in the front line, the train driver, everyone involved, and they're fast thinking and fast action. But when I heard it's not, immediately, of course, we won't make any judgments, and it's not a terrorist attack, and all of that, and then they find that the two are British-born. Do they not understand what a concern is of many of the public now? It is that we have in our country many people we know nothing about because they have entered illegally. And our fear is that this is the future of the UK, that there will be more terrorist attacks, and it may be people who would be told are British-born, but it will be people who really do not like the British.
Yeah. In a sense, it doesn't matter whether they're British-born or not. We do have people who are both born here and people who aren't born here who threaten our country, who threaten our way of life. And whether it's treated as terror or not, I mean, I had a very good message there a second ago from someone who said, just before the break, from someone who said, we don't really care if this is treated as a terror incident, not treated as a terror incident, whatever the kind of designation of the police is. The fact is this terrorised people and is terrorising people, not just the victims, Anne, not just the people who are lying in hospital right now, but many, many more people reacting to this news today.
Well, it's been a great fear of my generation. I'm a grandmother, I'm even a great-grandmother, of what kind of world are our children growing up in the future. And all the cuts that have been made to not only the police force, but the hospitals closures, all of the cuts in all the service, the probation service, everything that made this country a very good place to live. I've got visitors from Australia here at the moment who are absolutely shocked at what is going on, as I think many people are around the world. Terrorist attacks or whatever attacks do happen in all countries, but I like the way that countries like Denmark are now trying to deal with it, and others.
Tell us what they're doing.
We must be kind. Well, in that, we must be kind to everyone. We've exposed ourselves to real risks.
Yeah, yeah. And I just wonder what you think the solution to this is, or what we should do as a nation, because there'll be a lot of people who won't make a journey today because they're in fear. Should we be defiant about this? Should we be protecting ourselves? I mean, there are people saying, you know, you might have to go through, I hope this doesn't happen, airport style security to get a train. I think that's totally impractical given how many railway stops there are and how much staff and expense you would need. But there are a lot of people saying, how do we keep ourselves safe? That is a question, and a very valid question. The second question is, how do we stop this stuff happening in the first place?
Oh my goodness, I'd be a genius if I had a quick answer.
Yeah, yeah.
But I don't want us to live in fear. If you look at what's happening around the world, you create a climate of fear one way or another, and then you have control. And I'm frightened this is another reason the government will suddenly say ID for everyone, you know, the digital ID, and more control and less freedom for us. What we want is less freedom for the villains and the terrorists, whoever they are. We don't want to all be going about in fear, and I do urge people not to do that. Yes, be aware, be alert. What you can do to protect yourselves, obviously do it. I think one man was going to wear a security vest.
Yes, someone texted me earlier about having an anti-stabbing vest, yeah.
Yes, that's it, isn't it? Sorry. And then also to keep your eyes open, what's going on around you. Sometimes people who are up to no good, you know, they have the shifty way of behaving. You know, I think everyone needs to be alert and looking out for everybody else.
And they say that, don't they, when you're on those trains, when you're on the bus or whatever, they say if you see something that doesn't look right, message British Transport Police. I actually messaged them the other day by complete coincidence. I messaged them the other day when I saw someone who clearly was under the influence of drugs and indeed was openly carrying drugs on the tube I was on. Actually, I don't know if anything actually happened about it, and that's sort of a point as well, I suppose, Anne, in that we can have faith in the police who did their job in this instance, but with the more lower level things that are much, much less serious, well, are they actually taking action in all cases? Because so many people report things to the police and then hear nothing.
Well, that is so helpful, because I think what you said is what we all need to do, know how to report something that we're concerned about. There's always been a risk and a danger in this country. Well, I can think of different tiers that are not as serious as this. But the climate we're in, we have got to be alert and we have got to be aware. Okay. I'm sorry, Peter, I don't feel clever enough to provide any solution.
And you're a very clever person, and I appreciate your call very much, and a lot of wisdom in it, as there always is. That's Anne in Sussex there. Thank you, regular caller too, and always welcome. We'll go to another regular caller, Mark in Lincolnshire, in just a second, but I just want to read out a couple of messages first. Perhaps we should define terrorism as an act in support of an agenda, be it political, religious or whatever, an attack that has no basis in philosophy or theism, but committed in the pursuit of committing a crime such as burglary or theft. Where there is no obvious agenda, then refer to the act as terrorising. Should it still carry the same penalty? Semantics, yes. However, it may lead to less inflammation within communities. Darren says we need to get real in this situation. The government needs to make a dramatic change in the way they dispense punishment on these evil people in this country, which, if they are caught, will make them think twice before they do it again. Hannah says at this point any decent and strong PM would be saying that police have the full support of the government and the public in keeping us safe, and that includes backing of armed police, who I worry are terrified of doing what they're trained to do in incidents similar to this one, due to an army of woke lawyers and weak police leaders ready to destroy their lives and careers. Alison says, are we going to have the police on every train or every bus like the planes in America after 9/11? Vicky in Bournemouth, I'm enjoying your show this morning. Starmer's statement was appalling. It lacked any empathy for his own citizens. Nick says, there's no problem with any knife. The problem is the person holding it. Ron says, this is awful, but we need to tighten up things quickly. In the first instance, increase the penalty for carrying a knife, even on the first offence. Increase the penalty to whole life terms for this type of attack. Even if no one dies, increase stop and search everywhere at random and target people regardless of calls of racism. Plus, anyone caught with a knife with dual citizenship should be ejected regardless of colour or nationality. That's a simple start, says Ron. Someone else says basically the government needs to be as hard on these attackers as possible if they're really serious about trying to prevent these kinds of attacks from happening or spreading across the country. Let's speak to Mark in Lincolnshire, patiently waiting. 0344 499 1000 is the number he's called. Mark, what's your perspective on this?
It was just really to make a quick point, Peter, that literally nobody's picked up on. That is this police response that we keep, it's a wonderful police response, blah, blah, blah. Well, it's quite a deliberate police response, actually, because I'm pretty damn certain Huntingdon Station was selected to stop that train at, because it is literally 1.3 miles from Cambridgeshire Police Headquarters.
Right, so they would have had all the people ready to go and very close.
Yeah. Which is reported as about a 6-minute drive from the station. So yeah, that's, as I say, that's most likely why it's stopped there.
They still did a good job though, Mark.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, making that decision so quickly is a good job in itself. Actually realising where the train's located and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Getting it to stop there and actually the train being able to stop there, because obviously these things are shifting at quite a speed.
Sure.
So, yeah, that's quite important. But on the wider context of this, my other question on this is, when is the state going to allow us to have some kind of personal protection?
I don't want to live in that society. I mean, we might have to, but I just don't want to live in a society like that.
Peter, at the end of the day, I'm talking about something along the lines of pepper spray. Pepper spray is incredibly effective, literally stopping people attacking you instantly. It's it's not long lasting. It has no long-term health effects. These are all facts about this product. And the real reality is, Peter, somebody like you or I wouldn't intentionally go out and break the law to own it. Yeah, but a criminal will anyway. It's the same as owning a machete or a big knife and stuff like that. You or I wouldn't carry them. We wouldn't dream of carrying them, but a criminal will.
Yeah, it's true.
A terrorist will.
Yeah.
So by doing what we're doing, we're basically saying, well, they're going to do it anyway to you because we know they're going to do it to us anyway. This just repeats over and over again. So to constantly not allow the public to in some way be able to defend themselves, because the police are not always going to be there for you. And in most instances, they're not going to be there. They're certainly not going to be there for at least 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, are they? So, we're literally just lambs to the slaughter at this point.
Mark, thank you. A bleak analysis there, but one that I'm afraid has many factual points within it. Nick says, I just don't go out now, Peter. I go to a local supermarket once a week. I no longer even walk through my local park where robbery is a daily occurrence. Nick, I'm so sorry to hear that is the case. That is grim, and it's so sad that you feel that way about your local area, and you've evidence to suggest, you're talking about robbery being a daily occurrence. That is really, really grim. Thank you for that, Nick. Marge says, we can't let criminals dictate what we do or how we exist. We didn't stop existing during IRA terror attacks, 9/11, and the awful terror attacks through the UK. We still socialise. That's what we should be doing. Just be vigilant. Another person says, I do not trust our legal system. If someone was to defend themselves from an attacker, the attacker dies. How would the law deal with this? Elle says, you've been in government at times of major incidents, Peter. This is not a Cobra issue. We seem to want the Cabinet Office open for every incident that devalues the use and need for major critical incidents. This is a police investigation and government issue, not Cobra. And Trevor in Derbyshire says, anyone found carting a knife should face an immediate 5-year sentence regardless of whether they use it. That's Trevor in Derbyshire, so thank you to him for that. I want to just go through some of the reaction that we've heard on this show. Ben Abis-Jekti, actually, it wasn't on the show, it was on Mark Dolan's show, but he spoke to Mark Dolan just before I came on air. Let's just hear a little bit about the local MP, what he was saying about what has happened.
The train is still in the station, just over to my side. We've also got police still on the scene, much reduced from last night, but we have got forensics still conducting supporting the investigation by examining the train. The train station itself is still shut. There are trains passing through, but they aren't stopping at the station itself. But I actually got here last night around just after 9 o'clock. Which the incident had been dealt with at that point in time. There was a phenomenal police presence here. There must have been 20 to 30 police cars, around 10 ambulances still at that point dealing with casualties, and also four fire engines. But there was a very, very robust police response, and they were able to deal with the situation very, very quickly.
And the latest, is it my understanding correct there, Ben, that the 10 people attacked, 9 of whom are fighting for their lives, are at Addenbrooke's Hospital? Is that the case?
Great. So Huntingdon Station is actually very near to Hinchinbrook Hospital, but I think due to the nature of the injuries, they have been taken to Addenbrooke's Hospital, which is slightly further away, still in Cambridgeshire, but they've been dealt with there. I've got no further update, unfortunately, on the status of those.
Let's hear a voice note from Lisa.
Great show, as always. I'm Lisa from Braintree. I'm 47 years old, and I've never in my whole life felt unsafe travelling on the train. I spent years commuting into London, but I actually do feel unsafe now. We have also, not far from here, a migrant hotel. I'm fearful for my daughters. They're in their teens, to go out into town. I had a friend ask me to go out with her in London, and I'm now nervous about going to London. I've never felt like this ever, and there's something seriously going wrong with our society. And I do agree with what somebody said earlier about the government exacerbating the situation with the migration situation, and there's obviously seriously something going wrong, and we need to treat the cause, not the symptoms. So, great show.
Lisa, thank you for that. So much wisdom, so much great reaction, and so much great work behind the scenes as well. Yes, I sit here and present the programme, but there's a whole team behind the scenes that supports me and supported me very, very well today. I want to thank the producers, Chris Jacobs and Jodie